Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to call to order the 12 p.m. Department Head Budget Presentation Meeting of May 9th, 2022. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Go.
Here.
Vice Mayor Weir. Councilmember Arias.
Here.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
I'm here.
Councilmember Smith.
I am here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Okay.
Councilmember Gray.
Here.
Councilmember Parlier.
Thank you. In keeping with Council's resolution, the public statements portion is now divided into two periods. There's a period for items listed on the meeting agenda, and there's a period for items not on the meeting agenda. Statements for items listed on this afternoon's agenda are given a 2-minute time limit, 20 minutes per total per agenda item. Statements regarding items not listed on the agenda are also given a 2-minute time limit, 20 minutes total. If you have written comments that are longer than your verbal statement, give them to the clerk, who will give copies to the council. If you're here to make a public statement, please fill out a speaker card and give your completed card to the city clerk. We ask that you mark whether you're here to speak on an item listed on this afternoon's agenda or on a matter not on the agenda. Speakers who do not identify a specific agenda item will be presumed speakers for the non-agenda portion. Those speakers will be called during the non-agenda portion of the meeting. Madam Clerk, do we have any public speakers regarding items listed on this afternoon's agenda?
Mayor Go, we have not received any speaker cards for speakers not listed or for items listed on tonight's or this afternoon's agenda.
Thank you. Do we have any public speakers regarding items not on the agenda?
Mayor Go, we also have not received any speaker cards for items not on today's agenda.
Thank you. And with that, next item, please.
Reports item 4A, Department Budget Presentations.
Thank you, City Manager Clegg.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Welcome to our annual budget workshop process. This day, as well as one additional day in early June, we'll have presentations from each of our departments related to next year's budget. And we also cover some of our accomplishments in the current year and forward looking into next year. And today we'll be looking at our public safety as well as most of our citywide internal support departments. So we'll begin with fire and kick it off.
Thank you. And City Manager Clegg, is it true that those who are the most succinct and are able to speak with clarity and deliver their outcomes will receive the most money? Welcome, Chief Rando.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor. We can skip to slide 17, please. Okay. John Frando, Fire Chief of the Bakersfield Fire Department. I will be presenting our proposed budget for next fiscal year. I'd be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity now to introduce you to my amazing team that I brought with me today. From your left to right, we have Deputy Chief Kevin Albertson, Deputy Chief Jimmy Cherry, Deputy Chief Bill Ballard, and my business manager and right hand, Tony Crosby. Our Bakersfield Fire Department capabilities, we are an all-risk fire department. And when I describe that to the community, I basically tell them, if you're not calling specifically and solely for the police department, you are typically getting one of our red fire engines to show up and handle your emergency, regardless of what type of emergency it is. Although fire is in our name, fires are actually a small percentage of the incidents that we actually respond to. In fact, only about 8% of our responses are fire-related, whether they be structure fire, grass fire, car fire, outside fires. It's really a small percentage of what we do. The main percentage of what we handle are actually medical related. Over our close to 30,000 calls were medical related incidents last year. Can go anywhere from chest pain, difficulty breathing, car crashes, rescues, things of that nature. So a majority of our calls are actually medical related. Last year, we responded to over 50,000 calls for service. We have a OES Type 1 Hazmat Team, OES Regional USAR Task Force, and a USAR OES Swiftwater Rescue Team. And when they're OES typed resources, that basically means that we meet the state criteria on apparatus, equipment, and training of our members. So we usually have a high level of training with our members, as you could imagine, and we're very capable of responding anywhere throughout the state to offer services. We also have one ALS, Advanced Life Support Fire Engine, which basically means we have 2 paramedics on that unit almost every day. That unit is actually at Station 15, which is on Buena Vista near Stockdale Highway. We also have state responses to wildland, and you can imagine we respond to many fires. Some of the largest campaign fires in California history were fought over the last couple of years, and we have the capability of responding and assisting on any of those large campaign fires. We also have a very robust prevention and inspection services, and we actually inspect about 8,000 businesses here locally, with another 1,700 to 1,900 that actually participate in some type of hazardous materials, either storage, quantity, generating. So we definitely try to take care on the front end before we have any incidents on the back end. Some of our accomplishments in 2021, we were actually in December an accredited fire department, one of only 301 worldwide fire departments that are accredited. So it's definitely a huge accomplishment. Took a lot of man hours or staff hours to be able to accomplish that, with a lot of support from city management to ensure that we had participation from all the department heads that needed to provide any data or information to the accrediting agency. We have looked for and obtained many grants that help us purchase some of the large purchase items to support our programs, mainly in the hazmat program. Some of our equipment could be over $100,000 for each piece of equipment. So we actually look for opportunities to be able to bolster our budget by purchasing things through grant opportunities. We also obtained a off-road utility vehicle to be able to gain access to people who are maybe off-roading in the foothills and become either lost or hurt. We can actually gain access to them at a quicker time frame. We've actually collaborated with many agencies, but one that we're really proud of right now is the collaboration we have with the police department. We train with them, we rub elbows with them on a daily basis, and we've actually integrated some of our paramedics into their SWAT program. So we go with them to SWAT incidents, and we lend our support as paramedics in their SWAT program. We've had one recruitment process for new firefighters, and we have 24 of our newest firefighters in an academy that is set to graduate in mid-August. And we've also worked with human resources to put on several recruitment exams for promotions for the positions of engineer, captain, battalion chief, and deputy fire chief. So many thanks to human resources for helping us get the qualified members that we need to advance through the ranks. We'll also look for opportunities to make sure that our infrastructure is safe and clean and available to the public. So we look at any opportunity to improve infrastructure, address any repairs that are needed before they become large purchase items to be able to bring them up to standard. And we went through a strategic plan when we were going through the accreditation process, went through a 5-year strategic plan so that we have goals set for the next 5 years. And we implemented electronic forms online. Our prevention division did that so that the public has access to us 24/7. They can schedule any kind of inspection they would like from the fire department. They can request fire extinguisher training and also smoke detector installations. Our goals for fiscal year 22-23, we will continue to look for those grant opportunities to help us with our budgeting. Monitor residential and commercial build-out. We want to ensure that the entire city is safe regarding fire and EMS protection. Continue to enhance citywide disaster response preparedness. And one of the things that Deputy Chief Albertson is tasked with is updating the emergency operations plan for the entire city. All the department heads and division heads that you'll see later today will be working with Deputy Chief Albertson in the coming year and a half to be able to put together a final product. We'll also be working with our public information officer to ensure that our social media sites are really robust, provides good, sound information to the public, and we want to be good stories of our data, be able to tell our story. Want to implement our strategic plan goals. Some of those are recruitment. Want to ensure that our workforce mirrors society. Want to make sure that we are succession planning, making sure that the members who are coming up through the ranks are ready to fill the roles in those upper management level positions in the future. We also want to make sure we're engaged with the community, get out there and build partnerships within the community and get to the root problems that are apparent here in Bakersfield and try to look for those long-term solutions. We also want to look for any kind of maybe technologies that will help us be more efficient and effective throughout the community. And then we want to definitely focus on our members, making sure that they're trained and ready to respond to any type of emergency here in Bakersfield. As we look at the numbers on our proposed budget, we can see this current year's budget in comparison to our next or proposed fiscal year. And we can look across the general fund, which is about 8% increase. The main drivers in that increase is really internal costs. Fleet rates, about $500,000. Technology services, about $135,000, and the liability insurance for about $200,000. So a lot of that increase is actually internal costs. If we look at the Certified Unified Program Agency, which is the Hazardous Materials Regulatory Agency, which we have here in the Bakersfield Fire Department, it's called CUBA for short. The main drivers of that 7.87% increase, as well as the increase in public safety and vital services, are for the two positions that we'll be requesting, and I'll get into those positions here shortly. As we dive a little deeper into the numbers and salaries and benefits, again, the new positions that we're proposing are going to be the main drivers in that increase, as well as the increase in PERS and medical costs. As far as operating, again, mentioning the internal costs are really the main drivers in the operating cost increase. And then capital, it's only a change of $44,000, but really when you're looking at the capital investment that we're making in the Coupa program, we're looking at about $35,000 in upgrades to their computer systems in Coupa, which is actually a fully self-funded, fully funded, fee-supported program that we have within the fire department. As we compare ourselves to other agencies, it's really one of the things that we are very proud of. When we compare ourselves to 9 other similar fire departments in the state of California, you can see that our budget numbers are really low compared to a lot of those agencies, and we typically trend that way. We're typically near the bottom when it comes to budget, but when you look at call volume, we're typically near the top when it comes to call volume. Second last year, and only to Stockton Fire Department. One of the comparisons we like to show is the average of those other departments compared to Bakersfield Fire Department. And first we'll look at the budgets on average for those other 9 jurisdictions, $59 million compared to the $52 million for the Bakersfield Fire Department. And then we look at the responses. We average on average, the other 9 fire departments responded 31,500 calls compared to your Bakersfield Fire Department, over 50,000 calls. If we took the average budgets and divided them by the average call volume, we can actually kind of get a look at how much it costs per response. For those other jurisdictions, it's about $1,800 per response, and your fire department can do it in just over $1,000. As we look at the Fire Investigation Division, a lot of people typically call them arson, but our Fire Investigation Division actually investigates the crime of arson. So a little more detail in that. As far as our Arson Investigation Division, they don't respond to every fire that we have in the city. Our captains on every engine company and truck company are tasked with investigating the fires that they respond to. But oftentimes they may not have the extensive training that's required to be able to determine origin and cause. So they call out the investigation team, and the fire investigation team responded to 554 of the over 4,000 fires that we responded to in 2021. As you can see there, a large percentage of those fires were actually incendiary in nature. 76 were undetermined, and 95 of those were accidental. Of those 554 fires that were investigated by the Fire Investigation Division, we had 300 structure fires, and 97 of which were vacant structures. And I know that vacant structures has come up in a public safety update that I provided, and we're actually ready to launch the door hanger program that I introduced during that council meeting. And we're actually looking for the contractor who's going to make those, and we're ready to launch. Of the 43 arrests that the Arson Investigation Division made in 2021, we had 18 convictions. The other 25 are actually pending in the court proceedings. We anticipate a large percentage of those to be convictions because our Arson Investigation Division does a great job at collecting evidence and putting together a great case before they present it to the court. So we definitely anticipate a large number of those 25 to be convictions. The personnel requests, as I mentioned earlier, which are driving our personnel costs, we're actually looking for a few different positions. The positions that I'll be requesting through PSVS are dispatcher positions and another one that I'll describe here shortly. But the dispatchers, our Emergency Communications Center is actually a joint run communications center, which is on Panorama Drive. Kern County and Bakersfield fire dispatchers operate out of the same facility, dispatching calls to all of Kern County, including California City. Last year, or in 2021, the calls for service in that facility exceeded 500,000 calls for service. And when I'm talking about calls for service, not just 911 calls. There's a lot of ancillary calls that the dispatchers have to make to code enforcement, to law enforcement, to Red Cross. A lot of other phone calls have to be made from that center, and which is included in that over 500,000 calls. That 500,000 is actually a 238% increase over 2005 call numbers. The reason I referenced 2005 is that's the last time the Joint Powers Agreement was signed, the agreement between Kern County Fire and Bakersfield Fire. At that time, the staffing levels were set at 14 dispatchers for Kern County and 8 dispatchers for the city. Since that time, the county has actually added 6 dispatchers, while the city has added 2. The county is in the process of adding 4 call takers to the staffing, and we're actually going to wait and see what this staffing level, the kind of impact that our staffing levels as well as theirs has on our performance at the Emergency Communications Center before we determine whether or not we need additional dispatchers or call takers beyond this point. So definitely want to see how things pan out with the 2 fire dispatchers and whatever the county is willing to offer. Some of the impacts that we have, negative impacts that we may see as a result of the increased call volume and maybe not being able to meet either NFPA or state benchmarks is the state benchmark for call answer times is 95% of the calls should be answered in 15 seconds or less. At this time, we are actually only meeting 90% at 15 seconds or less, which is meeting just barely NFPA 1221, but not meeting that state benchmark. It puts into jeopardy some of the additional funds that we have access to through the state. By not meeting those benchmarks, we put those fundings in jeopardy, and also the Class 2 rating revolves around some of our call answer times as well. So could definitely have a negative impact on our Class 2 rating if we're not able to do a better job with our call answer times up at the communication center. The other position that we're requesting through PSVS is a fire service technician. This person would do a lot of the repair, calibration, and testing of some of our critical firefighting equipment, some of the self-contained breathing apparatus, or SCBAs, that we use as our lifeline to the outside, breathing nice, clean air inside of a structure fire. This person would handle the repairs to those units, as well as the mass and talk boxes that we have on those units. He would also help calibrate the monitors or get things out to vendors to be able to calibrate the monitors, as well as take the lead on hose testing and ladder testing for our department. This person would also assist us with the logistical support on large incidents. He would be able to deliver the light and air van to a large working incident and be able to deliver supplies like drinking water or Class A foam to areas that are in need. Oftentimes now we actually take rigs out of service to be able to deliver the support equipment and supplies to those firefighters who are on working incidents. So this person would be able to help allow rigs to stay in their first and response areas, protecting the members of the public where they're designed to do so. As we look at the breakdown on the numbers for those 2 positions but 3 members, the dispatcher positions would be just 185,000. Sorry, is that 155, sir? Yeah, 155,000. And then for there are no startup costs for that position, as they'll be working in the communication center at ECC. And then the maintenance division, the fire service technician is 95,000, with some startup costs and operating costs, and the grand total for those 2 positions would be 322,000. The one-time cost, we would like to purchase 1 new fire engine, which would bolster our reserve fleet. Our reserve engines are hurting. They're tired. As I mentioned before, we run a lot of calls here in the city of Bakersfield. Not only the starting up and turning off those fire engines, going from a cold engine to responding lights and sirens to an incident, not only the mileage that it takes to get to those incidents and back, but the idle times as they're pumping water on fires or operating on incident with the lights for warning passersby of our operations. Our rigs are expected to last 19 plus years here in Bakersfield. 14 years in frontline status and another 5 in reserve status. On a daily basis, we actually take inventory of how many reserves we have available for the department, and more often than not these days, there are no reserves available. They're in the shop waiting on repairs. All of our rigs have a long laundry list of repairs, and it's really tough to get them through. It's tough to keep them at the shop and long enough to be able to get the repairs that are needed to put them back in frontline service. Oftentimes we're left with going to the corporation yard and basically picking the best of the worst fire engines to put back in service. So having a really reliable frontline quality reserve apparatus would actually help us in the fire department to keep rigs in service and on the road. That fire engine would come at a cost of $950,000 fully equipped. The other 2 positions that we're requesting are actually in a fully funded fee-for-service program, the Coupa program that I had mentioned. 1 accounting clerk. We in the fire department, through our prevention team and Coupa team, actually regulates over 1,700 businesses here in town that have some type of hazardous materials involvement, whether they generate it, store it, or use it. And the prevention team conducts over 8,000 annual fire inspections. So this position would come at a cost of $73,000 a year, but is fully funded. The other position that will be fully funded through our fee-for-service Coupa program is a additional inspector. With the amount of fire plan reviews that we have that are now taking about 4 weeks to go through the plans, we can actually get that number down to about 7 to 10 days to turn a plan around. But this person would also be out in the public conducting fire inspections or fire and life safety inspections or hazmat inspections. Again, this position would be fully funded and fee supported. This position would be at a cost of $135,000. My final slide before my question slide is the capital improvement project list. One of the things, our main focuses this year is on the health and wellness of our firefighters, our best and most valuable asset. We would like to purchase washers, dryers, and extractors, which wash our turnout gear, our structure fire gear that our members have to wear day in and day out at structure fires and rescue incidents. We want to make sure that they have the ability to wash them, and inspect them on a daily basis after each fire to make sure they're not putting on cancer-causing carcinogens back on their body right after a fire. The other things that we're asking for are equipment for our USAR team. We want to make sure that we have the appropriate equipment, cash, and training, and high-pressure rescue bags that go on our fire engines and fire trucks to be able to lift heavy objects on rescue incidents. With that, I would like to open it up to questions.
Thank you, Chief Brando. Really appreciate what your department's doing on a personal level. Thank you so much for your response to my late father's incidents, and I know that you mentioned medical being the top response. It came out several times, and the service was always superb. So thank you so much. There was about a 19,000 discrepancy in the responses, and that average between the 10 cities and our city in the number of responses per year. Are the types of responses comparable? I mean, that's a lot more responses. We say this every year. But are the types of responses in the other cities in a similar proportion category-wise?
They are. In fact, most fire departments respond to the exact same kind of calls that we respond to. One of the things that we are actually looking at is looking, are we doing things that other departments are not? As I mentioned, our call volume increases 3,000 to 3,500 calls per year, and we're trying to see, are there things that other agencies are maybe asking their community partners to respond to instead of the fire agencies? I know that Bakersfield Police Department is doing the same regarding some people out in the community who may be better served by behavioral health. So we're looking at other opportunities to maybe not necessarily minimize the types of calls that we go to, but to be consistent with the industry standard.
Thank you, Chief. Councilmember Parlier.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Chief. You know, I have a lot of respect for you, your team, and the fire department in general, and all your personnel. And please relay my thanks to the hard work protecting our city every single day.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So a few questions. And we'll start with maybe dispatchers here. So you mentioned 8 dispatchers, hiring them, correct?
Say that again, sir?
Hiring dispatchers?
Yes, sir.
8, correct? That was
No, sir. There was a recommendation through a study, Councilmember Parlier, that suggested that the city hire 8 dispatchers. But they also mentioned a different staffing model, which the emergency communication center managers are not necessarily buying off on the model right now on how to staff it on 4 different shifts. So although the recommendation was that we hire 8 dispatchers, the county is putting forth a program where they're going to hire 4 call takers or dispatcher assistants, which is what they will be calling them. I would like to see how all that pans out when we get all that staffing level on the floor to see how they complement each other before I ask for any additional staff members on the center.
Okay, well, as you're aware, the Safe Neighborhoods Committee did a tour of the dispatch center there. And I'm going to ask you here in a second, Christian, when that's going to come back to council. But there's a big discrepancy between the county counterparts and the city dispatchers, you know, what they make. And I guess it wouldn't necessarily be a problem, but when you're working in the same bullpen and you're sitting right next to each other, and you can go to the county and not even have to change your desk or your uniform. Everybody wears the same polos. And there was a supervising dispatcher that was city and now county, and that's a lot of, you know, time, money, and effort that we put into those personnel, and I hope we make those corrections soon. But besides that, I'm in agreement with you, Chief. Arson investigators. How many arson investigators do we have right now?
We have 3 captains and 1 battalion chief.
Okay, with that call volume, do you think that's enough, considering the amount of arsons that we have, and along with illegal fireworks?
Yeah, one of the things that we're continuously looking at is our staffing levels to see that they're appropriate for our call volume, and looking at the tasks that they do on a daily basis. And one of the things that we're really struggling with, maybe from a standpoint where we have the requests for public records requests and go through the fire investigation team's office, so that takes a large workload on their part. The number of fires, as I mentioned, they responded to just over 450 fires. That's a little over 1 a day. At this, probably the challenge that we have right now is the society that we live in, where people are not as respectful to authority, and may require us to respond with PD or request PD. If we responded in pairs, it probably would make us a little bit safer. But again, we try to be responsible with our tax dollars. We try to evaluate our staffing levels, and we try to make the appropriate staffing levels given the conditions. We could always use more, but we definitely want to be fiscally responsible as well.
You had a couple arson investigators shot at not that long ago, didn't you?
We did have one who, a gentleman pulled out a gun and fired the weapon. Fortunately for us, the weapon did misfired or did not fire for whatever reason, and we actually went on a foot pursuit, and BPD was there in a heartbeat to assist with making the arrest. So as I mentioned, just a different society that we're living in now.
I agree too, and I actually brought this up last council meeting regarding the stations, the way they're already impacted. You can, just by observance of your calls for service, in comparison with other cities too, for fireworks. And as we get closer to the 4th of July, that's obviously going to increase. And with station crews already responding to a host of incidents and going out for every fireworks call that's coming in too, it's probably a lot. And I don't know if there's a way we can help mitigate that impact. Excuse me, Chief. That impact to local stations or not through, added arson investigator or investigators, along with the safety, protocols that you mentioned with having maybe more than one in the field. But I think there might be a better model potentially out there. I mean, it's up to your team to figure that out. But when station crews are running 24/7, as you're well aware of, and with little downtime, and then they have to go out for, I'll say a fireworks hunt, because sometimes a call will come in and you don't have a location, and the engine's just kind of circling a neighborhood, and not having that downtime and having to respond from that to another call. And, I know you're aware of that. The first administrative citation, I think it was issued through that process, is when you were a battalion chief and me and you were out together on the 4th of July and doing fireworks enforcement. So anyway, I'm not going to make you answer now, but if your team can maybe think about that, and if there's something, if another arson investigator would help alleviate that, maybe that's something we should do.
I appreciate the comments there, Councilmember Parlier. We'll definitely evaluate our staffing levels and see if there's a better model there.
Thanks. On the reserve equipment, you mentioned the new engine. Hold on one second, Chief. I got to take a drink here. On the new engine, fine with that, but you mentioned the corp yard, and I know there's a backup of your equipment at the corp yard. The corp yard is doing a lot of things, and I know they're doing a good job, but they have a lot of city equipment there. And I can understand the argument that say, hey, we have a critical piece of equipment, we're a public safety department, we need to be out in the field 24/7. But you have another department that says, hey, we have a trash truck and it's down too, and if we don't collect the trash, then people are going to be calling us, and it's a blight to the city also. Besides setting aside what you're requesting as far as the equipment piece, And I've talked about this before too, having an in-house field mechanic, like the road repairs, you see them on the freeways all the time, 24-hour service, replace hoses and belts and tires and things that don't necessarily entail, dropping an engine or putting a new transmission that the courtyard would do, but something that could keep a critical piece of equipment in the field. Are we looking at that?
Thank you, Councilmember Parlier. I will actually ask Deputy Chief Kevin Albertson to come up and respond to that. We were actually working with Fleet to determine what the best approach is to getting some of those lower level repairs or maintenance or preventative maintenance taken care of and addressed. And I know that he's been in the ear of Fleet and Mike Vogel. So I'll let him say a few words if you don't mind.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Yeah, that's one of the things we have been looking into. The courtyard is definitely busy with all the city equipment. We feel, of course, fire department equipment is important, and keeping the equipment in service is critical. So we've actually been looking at a plan for a service truck, and kind of like what you mentioned, a service truck and a mechanic that would be able to come to the stations, do some of the minor repairs and preventive maintenance, stuff like oil change, lubes, small jobs like brakes, maybe tires, and be able to keep our equipment in service at the stations and reduce the downtime that we have for them. We are in the process of searching for initially a contractor that can do that, provide a service truck for us. That'll give us some data as far as establishing, does this program work? We want to do that for a couple months, but we're still kind of in the infancy stage. We're looking for a contractor locally that is capable of doing that, and then we're going to bring that to the chief staff and the city manager and see if that's something that's viable. And once we have run that for 6, 7, 8 months, then we can take a look at the data, see if it's making a difference, and really be responsible in making sure that we make decisions based on data and have good information for you guys.
What's the timeline on that?
I would think we'd be able to have something established and some data within the next 7, 8 months.
How long?
7 or 8 months.
Okay. Obviously you know your team, but Christian, is there a way potentially we could expedite that, especially if we're going with a contractor, and at least do a trial run or something? And I'm going to segue real quick. How many pieces of equipment, engines and stuff do you kind of ongoingly have down at the courtyard that are just sitting down there?
So
for let's say minor kind of stuff?
So they go on all different types of repairs. I think a better representation is how many engines do we have in reserve status on a regular basis. Commonly, we have 1 engine in reserve status to no engines in reserve status. So that would mean we have 5 engines. We would commonly have 5 engines down there, occasionally an aerial apparatus, a truck. And the repairs range from preventive maintenance, which is critical, to large repairs. So the types of repairs, there's a wide array of repairs, but commonly anywhere from 4 to 5 engines and a truck.
At the courtyard?
At the courtyard, yes, sir.
Okay, well, and how many total do you have, not counting the reserves?
So 17 frontline engines, 3 trucks, 2 rescues, and 2 battalion chief rigs, and a USAR rig.
So 3 trucks, and you take 1 out of service, then you've lost the third?
So if we take 1 out of service, we do have 1 reserve. Our reserve truck isn't in great condition, and that's something that we've actually worked with the city manager with on purchasing a truck early because of the long build times. City manager Clegg has supported us on purchasing that truck early to get it here faster because he realizes the critical nature of it. And if we have 2 trucks go down, we'll commonly run a USAR rig and an engine if we have an engine available. And we have to strategically place the aerial apparatus around the city to make sure that we have good coverage for the appropriate risks.
Thanks. When you're doing your research through this period, as far as other cities like cities in our comparison to see what they do too, but again, Christian, if there's a way to expedite, if we're again, especially contracting to get out and maybe do a trial with some stations before we expand a program, but I think it's definitely something worth implementing. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Parlier. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, thank you for your presentation today, and I'll join Councilman Parlier in communicating my appreciation to your whole department and all the work that you do day in and day out. I hear people throughout the community use the euphemism putting out fires in their daily lives, when you literally are putting out fires in your day-to-day, and I certainly appreciate it. I know many people throughout the community certainly appreciate all the work that your department does to protect our community. I'm going to start, one of your statistics on slide number 10 here is cause for alarm for our whole community. 554 fires investigated, 383 incendiary fires. One a day. I mean, I think we're bearing the lead here. I mean, that is very concerning. Let me ask you this. What is the estimated amount in terms of total fire loss?
Councilmember Gonzalez, I don't have those figures with me. I'm not sure if Deputy Chief Cherry has that as well. Sir, I'll have to get back to you on that data.
I'd appreciate it. Yeah, I appreciate that. On average, how long does it take to investigate an arson?
Chief Cherry?
Councilmember Gonzalez, anywhere from 30 minutes to 3 hours.
Okay. Chief, I appreciate your comments. Certainly, we all want to be fiscally prudent and responsible with taxpayer dollars. I would make the argument to the community that the more fiscally prudent thing would be for us to invest more in arson investigators in this particular area to prevent future cost to not only the properties in question, but also surrounding properties that could be also in danger, and that it is an investment for us, given the nature of our, and we can talk about it all day, but societal changes and what's happening in our community, our growing, more complex community, that we have to take additional steps to protect ourselves and to protect our property. And in fact, it is the more fiscally responsible thing for us to do, given the nature of where we are today. So I appreciate that. I want to echo the points made by Councilmember Parley also with regards to some of the courtyard and issues related to engines that are out of service and how we can respond better. So City Manager Clegg and I have actually had conversations similar to what we've talked about here, but I know that he's working on some ideas, and I'd appreciate a full report on that as well. And then finally, you referenced the electronic plan review. Can you describe a little bit more of what that entails?
I think maybe City Manager Clegg may be a little bit more in line with answering that question. Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yeah, thanks, Chief, Councilmember, and Council. It's related to our electronic permitting for all departments.
Got it.
Fire has a piece in their plan check review.
Perfect. I was wondering if it was one and the same. Perfect.
Thank you, sir.
Well, I'm very excited about that electronic permitting process. It's long overdue, something that we need tomorrow, today, yesterday. We need it as soon as possible, and I'm glad that we're all coordinating. Thank you.
And on that note, Councilmember Gonzalez, our staff at Prevention is actually going through the training, probably as we speak.
Awesome.
Some of that training went on last week to many of our prevention team members, so they know that there's going to be a slight learning curve when it comes to launching the program, but we're definitely going through the training as well as other departments.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Gonzalez. Councilmember Arias.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Chief, and to your entire team for doing everything that you do on a daily basis to protect us. A couple questions along the same lines as my colleagues. Can you describe to me what are the consequences of us losing, I don't know if it's an accreditation, but the call response, I don't know if that makes sense. I forget the actual name of the term, but what are the consequences from the state if we don't meet those metrics?
So one of the things that the Cal OES, the 911 branch that looks at our numbers and looks at our response times for answering times, and we actually have about $1 million, just under $1 million that the state can give us, mainly for equipment that we need up at the dispatch center. If we fall below those numbers, the state can withhold some of the money or all of the money if we're not meeting that 95% of time calls answered within 15 seconds. They can withhold some of that money or all of the money, which would be a negative impact to not only the city budget, but the county budget as well, as we need to make good on whatever shortfalls that we have from the state, and we would actually have to supplement that funding to purchase whatever equipment's needed.
Okay, great. And currently we are under that threshold.
That's correct. Currently we are under the state threshold.
When do we need to submit those metrics to the state?
I believe they submit them year-round, and as I mentioned, we're in jeopardy of losing it. It doesn't necessarily mean that we will lose it, and I don't know the state of other communication centers throughout the state of California if they're able to meet the benchmarks as well. But I know that as our staffing levels remain the same and as call volume increases, it just makes it that much more difficult to be able to meet those benchmarks.
Okay, great. And I know that the study recommended that we take a look at potentially hiring on 8 new dispatchers. We're looking at doing 2 through PSVS. Do we feel confident that that is going to get us back and above that threshold?
I'm confident that with the 2 dispatchers that we are asking for, in addition to the call takers that the county is putting forth, that we can improve those statistics.
Oh, so our metrics are tied to the county's performance as well?
That's correct.
Okay, got it. Thank you. The other thing, too, is I'm also going to lend my support, taking a hard look at the compensation for our dispatchers. I think it's critical that we bring them into parity with their county counterparts. Actually was shocked when I heard that I believe out of the 18 county dispatchers that they have at the communication center, 11 of them came from the city of Bakersfield's ranks. And so I just want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to retain that quality workforce. They are that first response to individuals who are in crisis. Now, with regard to the courtyard and the response times, this is actually a question for Christian. Are we seeing similar slow responses to vehicles being fixed up and put back on the road, or is this just a fire department issue?
Thanks, Councilmember, for the question. This is not unique to the fire department. We have several factors going on. One, we've seen a dramatic increase in our fleet, which I think is good news overall, but we're really trying to staff up to that. We actually haven't filled all positions in fleet that have been funded even under PSVS in recent years, as well as we've actually recently done a fleet assessment, an efficiency assessment, to help us take a hard look at, are there certain operational things we can do to create some efficiencies and some streamlining, and we're not fully implemented on the outcomes of that fleet assessment as of yet, so that we can, again, be as efficient as possible, staffed up as possible, and keep up with this new demand. But the council has put resources to fleet to be able to be faster. We just have not, fully deployed all those resources yet.
Okay, got it. Looking forward to that coming back to council so we can take a further look. Now, when we are looking at arson challenges, if I could bring up Mr. Cherry again. I know that for some of our violent crimes that we've taken a look at, there's a lot of chronic or repeat offenders. Is that also the case with arson?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How many are we looking at? Is it 20? Is it 50?
Yeah, we're looking probably about 75 to 85%.
75 or 85% are being committed by how many individuals, roughly?
I'm not sure that I understand the question.
Yeah, so what we see is for some of maybe homicides, for instance, in talks with the district attorney's office, there's probably about 20 individuals that are committing the lion's share of those crimes. Is that something that we're also seeing in arson?
Until we arrest them, sir, we would have no idea. But
Okay.
since the beginning of this year, we've already made 22 arrests.
We've already made 22 arrests.
Correct.
Okay. And what tools do we have to hold them accountable at this point?
The justice system.
So is that a misdemeanor? Is it
No, it's actually a felony.
a felony?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what does the time look like?
It could be anywhere from 6 months to 6 years.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just depending on the crime, because you
Okay.
have several different crimes of arson.
Okay.
Great bodily harm, structure, wild land. So you have different charges for different arson crimes.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. And then lastly, Chief, wanted to also talk about what does the vacant and nuisance property plan, I know Councilmember Gonzalez has been an outspoken champion for this issue. What is our plan and strategies to start tackling those and really, if possible, be preventative in ensuring that we're protecting our neighborhoods?
Yeah, so one of the things that I mentioned on my public safety update was the overwhelming number of vacant structure fires. In fact, the stats, I believe, on one of the slides was 97 vacant structure fires that the Arson Investigation Division, Fire Investigation Division responded to last year. One of the things we want to make sure that we're doing is giving people a voice, giving the neighbors a voice, somebody who lives next door or a business that occupies a space next door to a vacant structure, to make sure they have a voice and that they know who to call. We've been working with code enforcement and the Bakersfield Police Department on putting together a door hanger that we can put on the neighboring structures so that the neighbors of those vacant buildings know that those units should not be occupied, the building should not be occupied, the residents should not be occupied, and gives them a voice and lets them know who to call. So when they see activity, whether it's transient activity or just trespassers, in that structure, around that structure, to give them a voice, let them know who to call. If we can keep people out of those structures, keep them secured, the events of fires would not begin. A lot of the vacant buildings that we have that have already burned more than once, we work with code enforcement, we work with the utility companies to ensure that there are no accidental ignition sources, the gas has been cut off, the electrical has been cut off. So truly there is no source of accidental fire in these structures. So it really, when you start looking at the odds of how this started, is typically going to be somebody who's inside of the building who should not be there. So if we can use that door hanger program as a voice for the neighbors, when they see something, say something essentially, we can keep people out of those buildings. We remove that accidental or incendiary cause of a fire. We remove that out of the equation as well, and we hope to have less vacant structure fires as a result of this program. And as I mentioned earlier, those door hangers are set to go out to print. They've been vetted through the city manager's office, and we're sure we have a pretty good program. We've looked at other agencies to see what other departments are doing. Do they have a program like this? And they don't. We've yet to find another fire department that is utilizing something like we are getting ready to start. So we're pretty proud that this might be a one-off, but we think it's going to be one of the really good solutions of preventing those vacant structure fires.
Excellent. Thank you, Chief, and thank you for your forward thinking on that. And just want to lend my time as well. Would love to join you guys in passing those out and making sure that we're getting the word out.
Thank you, Councilmember Arias.
Thank you, Councilmember Arias. Chief, how long has ECC not been meeting the state benchmarks? Is an annual evaluation?
Honorable Mayor, I will have to go to the managers up at the dispatch center and gather that information for you. But the fact that we are at 90% of those calls being answered in 15 seconds, in 15 seconds or less, rather than 95% of those calls, it would stand us to reason that it's been some time that they haven't been meeting that benchmark. But I can gather that information and provide it at a later time for you.
Thank you. And then also you mentioned that that we're not meeting or just meeting the NEP 1221. So how close is just meeting?
Just meeting means we're right at 90th percentile.
And do you know how long that's been going on, or that's probably something that you would need to gather too? I'm just curious how we get that close to the edge and we're not able to do something about it.
Yeah, we're ready to do something about it, and I'll find out those statistics for you, Mayor.
Thank you so much, Chief, and thank you to your team. Is there anyone else who has questions? I don't see any lights. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chief Rando. Up next is BPD and Chief Terry and his team.
Welcome, Chief.
Good afternoon. All right. Is there still a contest, I suppose, Mayor, or?
It's that succinctness, brevity, but
All
getting
right.
everything in concisely.
I will try to do all of that.
That's great.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, Greg Terry, Police Chief, and I'm here with Assistant Chiefs Brent Stratton and Mike Hale, who will make a portion of the presentation here in just a few minutes, and also to our business manager, Ariam Isaac, as well. So I will go over our proposed budget for next year. As you know, just a few weeks ago, I was here with Christy Tinter doing a staffing update as well as the district attorney, providing an overview of public safety and crime over the last year, and particularly over the last several years. So I will be respectful of your time and not go over that data again, but I will talk a little bit about some of our accomplishments over the last 3 years, and then we'll get into next year's budgets. Our mission is to partner with our community to protect the lives and the property of the people we serve. We take very seriously our responsibilities to this community to provide that service. And we do this guided by our values of compassion, accountability, and professionalism. 3 years ago, the Public Safety and Vital Services measure was passed. And I want to talk a little bit about some of our accomplishments over the last several years, or last 3 years in particular. I do not know where we would be today from the public safety perspective if we did not have the Public Safety and Vital Services measure. I know that we have significant public safety challenges. I hear about them every day, and I know you do. And I know that what's most important to our community is that when they call us, that we come. And that we come as quickly as we can, and that we're trained, equipped, and skilled to resolve whatever the issue is. And we need to do that as quickly as we can, and that is the focus of all that we are doing, is to, when a call comes in from our community, is try to get there as soon as possible and resolve that issue. And it takes a significant infrastructure, and it takes being flexible and adaptable and exploring new things to be able to maintain a high level of readiness to meet our community's demand. And you'll hear a little bit about that in just a few minutes. But let's talk a little bit about some of the accomplishments over the last several years. We've hired just over 200 officers over the last several years, but with attrition and a variety of other types of separations, we've actually a net hire of just over 80 police officers. 33 of them are currently in the academy now and will graduate in September. With this additional staffing over the last several years, we've been able to restore the impact unit. The impact unit is the team within the police department that does the heavy lifting on a lot of our homelessness and quality of life issues. They are a significant and a very important resource for us in the community. But we've also expanded several specialized units, the Special Enforcement Unit that focuses on gun and gang violence, and do a fantastic job along with some of our community partnerships. We have increased the capacity of our community relations unit which is really crime prevention, crime education, trying to focus on the prevention side. I believe that our community has capacity for some self-protection if we will engage them and provide education and prevention type services. That's what the Community Relations Unit does. We've also increased the size of the Quality Assurance Unit. In order for us to do all of the things that I'm talking about, we have to have good data. We have to make decisions that are founded in the facts and founded in what's really occurring both on an individual performance level and then as well as an organization. And this Quality Assurance Unit allows us to do that. We've increased field supervision, which is very important. As officers across the patrol shifts, as the number of staffing have gone up, it's important that we maintain an appropriate span of control. And so we've been able to increase field supervision as well as an increase of detectives into the investigations division. We've also been able to increase staffing in the communications center, and I know you were just speaking about that. Just over 775,000 calls came into the communications center at the police department last year. It is a very busy place. And over the last 3 years, we've been able to increase staffing with dispatchers, but it's also enabled us to create a new classification called call taker, which is just below that of a dispatcher. It really performs all of the functions with the exception of actually dispatching over the radio. It can answer 911 calls. It can assist officers in the field. It can provide just about every level of service except that critical function of dispatching. And that position has really enabled us to maintain more stable staffing levels so that we can decrease our response times, both on the front end, answering the call as quickly as we possibly can. And you just talked about that with the fire department. Chief Rando reported that they answered their 911 calls within 90% of the time, with the goal being 95%. We also have the same goal of answering 911 calls 95% of the time within 15 seconds. Last year, we were at 80%. Just for some comparison and perspective. And with the increases, we have still been able to increase that. We went from high 78s into 80 last year, and so we are answering them faster, but certainly not at our goal. We've also been able to increase staffing across the police department in various support staff positions. These are critical functions throughout the police department, and if we did not have some of these staff, you would have police officers off the road doing these administrative tasks. So we're very, very grateful for this support. Facilities, we now have a dedicated training facility that we've never had one of those before, and we were able to get that into the last 3 years. This facility is such a critical part of our being able to maintain our readiness, being able to certainly train and to recruit and train the officers that we are aggressively doing so right now, but it's also a facility that's very important to maintain the ongoing, mandated, and essential training that we expect our officers to have so that they can perform the appropriate functions in the field. We've also been able to make critical improvements to our infrastructure. The pistol range, I think, was built in 1948, and over the last 2 years has been undergoing a retrofit, and we are very nearing completion. I think you'll probably have something come before you next month in a final project of that, and so we're hopeful in the next few months we can begin using that again. We were also able to complete a facility and staffing needs assessment that had never been done in our organization to really look at staffing and facility needs for about 20 years. We've established additional partnerships and services. Kern Behavioral Health is one of the most significant ones and most recent ones with creating differential response partnership. We have a clinician in the comm center that we've talked about. That was a pilot project that began last August, and we will be asking with this budget to make that permanent and to expand it to 3 full-time positions. It won't quite give us 24-hour-a-day coverage, but it will significantly increase the staffing there across all of our shifts. During the pilot project, if you remember, this clinician was able to handle about 63% of the calls that were provided to them that actually came in as a 911 call. If it had a mental health crisis, it would go to this clinician, and they would triage it and determine whether or not there was an immediate public safety issue. And in that case, it would go back for dispatching of an officer, or they would connect them with some other current mental health resource. And about 63% of the time, they were able to resolve that without a police response. ShotSpotter, this is gunshot detection technology that we now have covering 6 square miles across the city in the areas where our city experiences the most frequent gun violence. The reality is a very few of the actual reported gunshots are reported by community members. The vast majority of our reports will come in over ShotSpotter, and that's not surprising because many of these communities and neighborhoods have had to suffer with this for so many years. They've become immune to it of sorts. And even though it significantly impacts their safety of their families and their daily life, they've just given up and don't report it. And so we are experiencing that and seeing that with ShotSpotter. We're actually seeing that play out. But ShotSpotter is not only important for us to know exactly where gunfire is occurring so that we can respond to the precise place, so that we can reduce injuries and make arrests. It's also very important for us to send those messages to these communities that have been suffering from this, that we do care. We will respond and take action when this occurs. And ShotSpotter is an important part for us to be able to do that and send both of those messages. CalVIP is another expanded partnership that is focused really on gun and gang violence and a group reduction strategy. It is the police department working with community-based organizations to focus resources and services on those that are most likely to engage in gun violence or be a victim of gun violence. And it enables us to really use our resources more efficiently, and there is tremendous data to support that this approach to reducing gun violence can be very effective. And so it is much different than we might have used to address gun and gang violence, where you just saturate an area with a large number of officers. This is much more strategic and precise in trying to get at the root cause. We've also been able to dedicate an employee wellness coordinator. As we all know, in order for us to truly be the resource that our community needs, our people need to be physically, emotionally, and mentally well. And we've not been able to pay that much attention, or as much attention as we should, over the last several years. But with the public safety and vital services measure, these resources have enabled us to now have a full-time coordinator that really focuses on internally what's going on with our staff, connecting them with resources that are available from the city, as well as outside organizations that come in and provide training and will provide services to our employees. This is a critical part of us being able to keep people healthy, and that when they do go out on an injury, part of our goal of this program is to try to return them to work as soon as possible, and engaging them and providing them resources and just letting them know that we care is very important to do that. And so this is an important part of our strategy. And then lastly, on the equipment overview, we were able to restore the motorcycle unit, and that is a very important piece of or unit for us to be able to address the many and diverse traffic issues that we have across the city, most particularly with reducing collisions at some of our major intersections, but also in speed enforcement. If all of the equipment comes in, I believe that we'll have about 18 motors out that we can deploy by the end of this year. The body-worn camera program, we reached full deployment in June of 2020. That is technology that we are so grateful for, and it is very important to us and proven to be very successful on many different levels. The regional radio system, being able to communicate with our communications center and with other allied agencies is critical. Being able to communicate with each other in the course of an emergency is very, very important in this regional radio system. That is a project with the fire department and technology service as well is also underway, and that is a very needed piece of the infrastructure that is needed to address for a very long time. So the next two slides will talk about our appropriations and our funding sources. Our total appropriations for this next fiscal year are just over $151 million. That is the salaries and benefits, the operating, as well as the capital outlay. It's about a 13% increase overall. The operating, the vast majority of that are costs that are outside of our control, internal cost, risk rates, etc. Only about 4% was a discretionary increase of that. These are the budget resources that will fund our proposed budget this next year. The general fund increase of just under 12%. The public safety and vital services measure about 21%. That is now inclusive of all of the growth of the department over the last several years. Traffic safety is our red flex system, and we'll be having some conversations about that this next year as I believe the contracts are up for renewal. And we're getting some feedback from the community, and we're having some conversations about whether or not we should expand that to some other intersections, and there's some studies that will be underway to do that as well. The Supplemental Law Enforcement Services Fund there, increase of just over 2%. That is a funding that we get from the state that can be used for frontline law enforcement services, training, and equipment, really focusing on officers and anything related to the field services. There we go. Just some of the grants that we're expecting this next year as well. Some of them we routinely get. Some I've already talked about. The Supplemental Law Enforcement Fund, that's the funding that we anticipate receiving from the state this next year. The Remote Access Network Board, the RAN Board, that is funding that we get every year as well. It actually funds 2 latent print examiners in our crime scene unit. It funds their positions fully, salary and benefits, as well as overtime. These are the men and women who do a lot of the fingerprinting and the analysis of fingerprinting. They also go out into the field and process crime scenes as well. This fund also pays for our air cards for our mobile computers as well. Then Office of Traffic Safety, that we're anticipated receiving just over $400,000 for DUI enforcement and various pedestrian, bike safety, and speed enforcement operations. And we're anticipating, we haven't heard word yet, but we expect it, a grant from Alcohol Beverage Control to conduct minor decoy operations and provide ABC training to the officers so that they understand what establishments' regulations are and what's required of them. If we respond to a call for service, it just enhances the skills of the officers to be able to handle a wider variety of issues. I'll quickly go over the categories of some of the things that you're going to hear about in our next budget or in our budget request for this next year. Staffing, really focusing on staffing to reduce response times and increase community engagement, among other things. The staffing really consists of 12 positions, 1 police captain, and 11 professional staff. These positions will reduce response times, increase accountability, and oversight mechanisms within the police department. It'll provide for more community engagement and crime prevention programs, as well as increase public safety or public service hours at our property room, and increase our ability, again, to make data-driven decisions across the organization. The facility requests that you hear about will make for more timely processing of our police recruits, as much of this focuses on the training facility. Based on the department's growth, we need additional space to keep pace with the mandated and necessary training for our officers, but it will also ensure that we're able to keep pace and meet the expectations of POST, which certifies our police academies. Our property room is another one of the facilities that you'll hear about. It is in dire need of improvement because we are completely out of space. We have probably over 300,000 items of evidence now that could be disposed of if we had the staffing to do that. Part of the facility improvement that you'll hear about will increase the immediate capacity significantly, increase the immediate capacity of the property room, and ensure that we're able to maintain industry standards and maintain the public's confidence to ensure that we manage our evidence and property appropriately. We are continuing to implement a community policing philosophy, which really is focusing on root cause issues, trying to be data-driven, but also trying to understand what is driving some of our public safety issues and try to have and develop partnerships and collaborate with not only other allied agencies, but community-based organizations to address them as well. And then you'll hear about some of the equipment that we are, as we are continuing to grow, some of this equipment and vehicles are necessary There will be also some equipment that we don't talk about, but that will be very important to us, that will come to you through the technology services, through a variety of public safety technologies that we are, again, trying to leverage everything that we can to make sure that we can be as efficient, but also as effective as our community expects us to be. And with that, I will turn it over to Assistant Chief Stratton.
Good afternoon. I'm going to take the next few slides to talk to you a little bit about some of the staffing requests that we have. And the first one up is going to be for an additional police captain. This position that we're proposing would go to field services, which is where the largest share of our personnel and the extreme majority of our people assigned to our department work. This would go to split the load with the patrol captain and a dedicated traffic-related captain there in our field services. We believe it's needed to monitor and evaluate the efficiency and effectiveness of the service delivery, to monitor our crime reports and trends for necessary changes in operating policies and procedures, as well as to ensure compliance with mandated training, reduce liability, and develop and implement community-oriented strategies. Next, in our administration division, we're looking at adding 2 professional staff members, one in the public information office with a title of a communications coordinator. There has been significant changes in how and where people get news and information, and they can no longer rely on traditional methods of communication in an attempt to connect with and build relationships with our community. We believe that this will help us to develop a proactive strategy of engaging our residents in preventing crime, as well as problem solving. We think it can help educate residents about public safety issues and provide them with timely and accurate information, as well as help to develop original content to share information on recruitment, resources, and results of departmental activities. We think it will also help us by providing consistent messaging on departmental operations and enhance the community engagement and trust. The next position that you see would be in our quality assurance unit. We'd like to add 1 performance analyst. We've been very purposeful in implementing data-driven strategies, and that's helping us in making sound operational decisions based on the facts and the data that we're receiving. The performance analyst will help us analyze individual performance, organizational compliance, as well as data trends to improve the quality of the police services while ensuring robust accountability and oversight within management. We think it will help us to provide additional intelligence that allows staff to make vital performance assessments and strategic and fiscal decisions more quickly, more precisely, and more confidently. We think it will help us to build oversight and accountability tools to improve the overall performance of the department, its management, supervision, and the quality of services that we provide. Moving to the investigations division, we're proposing to add 1 crime analysis supervisor. The crime analysis unit currently provides data on crime, suspects, victims, location of quality of life issues, traffic-related issues, etc. Their analysts support criminal investigations, prosecution, patrol-related activities, crime reduction strategies, deployment strategies, problem solving, as well as the evaluation of our strategies. The position would supervise the 5 current crime analysts that we have working within the police department. These 5 crime analysts are currently supervised by a sergeant. This is a sergeant in our investigations division, and with just the natural movement and rotation, it's something that moves around a lot. This would help provide some consistency and be the first time that we would have a dedicated, trained professional in this role supervising the analysts that are providing the information to the rest of the department. This would be able to take a police sergeant and move them back to other assignments. Additionally, we are looking to add 3 police property and equipment specialists assigned to the property room. The property room is the sole repository for physical evidence and items that are seized for safekeeping. Secure evidence in property room is critical elements of successful law enforcement operations, and the current staffing that we have is insufficient to adequately process and secure the increasing volume of evidence seized by the increasing number of officers that we've had. current staffing levels have resulted in a reduction of hours of availability to the public, and adding this staff would be able to increase the hours of availability to the public, ensure our property room is maintaining industry standards and recommendations for evidence handling, reduce the amount of time for officers and detectives that are spending booking or acquiring evidence, and it would restore our ability to begin disposing of property that's now eligible for destruction, which is estimated to be well over 300,000 pieces of property that we can begin to start purging. Moving to our support services division, we are proposing to add 4 police dispatchers to our ranks. What this would do is it would take the work that we currently have of supervisors who are answering 911 phone calls, who are dispatching themselves, and be able to move them to a supervisory role and be able to have these dispatchers that will reduce call waiting times and progress towards the compliance of the national standards you heard Chief Frando and Chief Terry speaking about, being able to reach a point where we can answer 100% of our 911 calls within 15 seconds. We believe this will reduce the volume of calls per dispatcher. You heard Chief Terry say that a little over 750,000 calls came into our dispatch center, meaning that each dispatcher was handling a little over 18,000 calls for service. Whenever we look at our comparable cities on that, we see that we are higher than almost every comparable city as far as the number of calls for service that our dispatchers are handling. This will help reduce the overtime, the mandatory overtime we have for dispatchers, and improve our employee wellness. We're looking to increase our clerk typist capacity by 1. Our clerk typists perform routine and repetitive clerical duties throughout the police department. This position would perform the numerous administrative tasks specifically associated with the public records requests that we receive to ensure timely, accurate, and professional release of public records. This will decrease the time officers spend handling mandated administrative duties related to auto theft, missing persons, and various other calls for service. We believe it will also decrease the processing time of field-related reports as well as online reports, improving our service to our community. That's it from my staffing perspective. I'll turn it over to my partner, Assistant Chief Mike Hale, who's going to talk about facility improvement-related requests.
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor Go and council members. My name is Mike Hale, the other assistant chief with the police department. So I'm going to be covering facility improvements, some new services, and equipment. First area of facility improvements is going to be our training facility. I would like to just make mention that we are very grateful, as Chief Terry said, about the opportunity to have our own training facility. It does make a huge difference in being able to put our own stamp on our people that we bring into the organization and then put them out on the street to provide that great service to our community. So we're very thankful for council and supporting us in that venture. Although we do have a new facility, it does face a few different challenges, one of which is the process in which we hire people. It faces a challenge of space and maintaining and keeping up with post standards. So speaking of the police officer application process, we have a number of background investigators who work out of the training facility, and they currently don't have enough space, office space, to do their jobs. We have 8 of them, and they're all working, mingling within one large office with a secretary, and we feel that if we can do some minor renovations to the training facility, we can provide them some office space. Our recruits, when they come through the hiring process, we need to have space for them. Specifically, as you see in the photo here at the top, that's our defensive tactics room, which is a auxiliary building, and that picture below is the northern edge of that photo. So we're wanting to expand that, and I'll explain that in just a moment. And again, these additions to the training facility will help us keep within the peace officer standard and training mandates and their standards. So to do this, we want to renovate the interior of the atrium inside the training facility to create the office space for our background investigators. It will allow them to have those private conversations with our lateral applicants and our police trainee applicants that they currently have to go to other facilities or move around other folks within the training facility to make that happen now. We would like to construct a second prefabricated building adjacent to the existing building on the same property. This is a necessary add so that we can have our police training academy occurring at the same time, meanwhile providing training to our current complement of officers, which we do throughout the year, each and every year. There is an outside storage area that is partially covered, however not secure, that we need to use for training equipment. And so we want to be able to enclose that area to provide storage space for needed training equipment for the police academy and for our regular police officers. This property does not have any security features, although it does have a few cameras attached to the outside of the building. It is in need of security features such as fencing. So we would like to provide fencing to the property so that we can prevent some of the problems that we've been having over the past couple of years, such as it being accessed by unauthorized people wandering upon the property. And we've also had a few vandalisms and a theft over the past couple of years. An additional budget ask is that we would like to partner with Recreations and Parks and build a permanent obstacle course. If you look at the bottom picture, you can see, it's kind of hard to see, but there's some green cones, and then there's a bar jump over on the right-hand side, right of the bushes, the planter box there. Whenever we have lateral officers or police trainee testing, these individuals come to our training facility on California Avenue, and part of testing is a mandated obstacle course they have to navigate. And so we cordon off portions of the parking lot and have these folks run through the parking lot to participate in this test. So in partnering with Recreation and Parks, we would like to build a permanent obstacle course over at Yokitz Park. We believe that this will meet our performance and safety standards for the obstacle course, and it'll also add to the aesthetics of the park and give us a more professional, respectable appearance when these individuals, especially from other communities, come and to want to potentially move to Bakersfield and work for the Bakersfield Police Department. Moving on to our property room. Assistant Chief Stratton and Chief Terry both talked about this a little bit, but our property and evidence facility, it has exceeded its physical capacity for our current needs. It is the sole repository for evidence, such as firearms, narcotics, biological evidence, and any other piece of evidence that's seized related to various investigations that we participate in. With advancements in the nature of criminal investigations, our volume of evidence continues to increase, and unfortunately, many of these items that we seize require lengthy retention periods, a lot of things out of our control. So due to the high volume of items coming into the property room, we are unable to properly store and catalog items per industry standards. So in addition to let me back up, excuse me. When we had our facility space needs study, a recommendation was given to us to purchase high-density modular shelving units, which would maximize our usable space. So if you look at the top picture, that's an example of another agency who has actually purchased these items for their property room. We believe that, and based on the recommendation, that it will create about 171% increase in storage in the main portion of our property room, 133% increase in storage in our firearms room, and about a 43% increase in storage in our narcotics room. So what we'd like to do is purchase the high-density shelving to expand our property room's storage capacity. It will also accommodate future growth of our department, maintain industry standards, and which also will increase community trust. Part of this project includes extending the south end of our prefabricated property room. So if you look at the slide there, the vehicles are on the south end of the property room. Increasing the size of the property room will give us about 1,700 extra square feet. When the property room was initially built, it was constructed so that it could accommodate an extension. Okay, partnerships. We would, as Chief Terry mentioned, we would like to increase our complement of clinicians working in our communications center to a total of 3. We believe that it will impact our communications center in a number of ways. It will decrease the amount of time dispatchers spend on the phone. dealing with behavioral health matters that aren't necessarily an emergency, so non-emergency issues. We believe that it will also decrease the number of times they're on the phone with people who may already be a client of Kern Behavioral Health, trying to help them navigate to the next step in their process. Ultimately, what that will do is will decrease the number of calls for service that our officers are having to respond to in our community and dealing with non-emergency issues with folks that have behavioral health issues. Again, the clinician project over the last year, 63% of the calls that clinician handled were calls that police officers did not have to respond to, ultimately decreasing our response times to priority calls for service. So moving on to new services requests. ShotSpotter Connect. As you all know, you are familiar with our current ShotSpotter system. This is a service within the same company, and it communicates with our records management system. It communicates with all of the reports that officers write, whether it's a burglary, a robbery, some type of other theft, reports that the community inputs into the system that we look at. And this system, it's artificially intelligence-driven analysis of this data, and it helps strategically deploy our personnel into our community. We believe that it will maximize crime deterrence and reduce harm to the community. So if you look at the middle picture, those little orange boxes are called missions. And so this system identifies areas in the community where it believes that crime is going to occur, when it's going to occur, where it's going to occur, and what time it's going to occur. And then we support that system by deploying resources into those areas, either doing proactive patrol or just high visibility patrol to try to deter that crime. This helps with engaging the community, creating another layer of transparency with the community as well. The second new services request is SpiderTech. SpiderTech is a software system that specifically works with the community, and it's a customer service type technology. It's integrated into our computer-aided dispatch center, so when community members are calling in, reporting a crime where they're a victim, or reporting a crime where they observe a crime occurring, it has an automated feedback loop, if you will, that lets that community member know, hey, thank you for calling the Bakersfield Police Department. We will get someone to provide you service as soon as we possibly can. I can't read the gray writing at the bottom left down there, if you can on your slide. That's an example of what is sent out in automated text. Once officers are dispatched, that community member gets a follow-up text letting them know, hey, officers are on their way. At the conclusion of the call, that community member is receiving another text asking for feedback and basically a survey of our services to measure community trust and satisfaction. They also have the opportunity to provide feedback as to their major concerns occurring in their neighborhood, so we can use that information to help deliver our services a little bit better. The main point with the SpiderTech is it provides that direct, real-time feedback to the police department from the work from our police service technicians, our police officers, and our detectives, which is certainly critical to our success. And there's also a couple examples of the survey questions on the slide there as well that you can read. All right, my last slide, equipment. We are asking for 15 black and white patrol vehicles. These are Ford Explorers, and these vehicles will be given to officers out there on the front lines providing service to the community. These vehicles will help maintain our vehicle availability. 2 off-road utility vehicles. This will enhance our off-road capabilities. Specifically, mostly will be used by our impact unit in the river bottom to the east, central, and to the west, as well as our traffic unit. And it'll also be used for security at various events here in Bakersfield that your typical Ford Explorer is a little bit not conducive to getting from point A to point B, and will help with that rapid response if need be. And lastly, 4 police service technician trucks. This will accommodate the increase in our complement of PSTs and parking enforcement technicians. And I'll ask Chief Terry to come back up here to the podium for any questions.
Thank you, sir. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief. Can you give us an update just on that incident at Frontage and A with the donuts and all of the crazy things there?
Sure. That was one of, I believe, 6 incidents that occurred that night, both downtown, on the west side of town, and then south end as well. We made, how many arrests? 8. Made 8 arrests in total of all of those incidents. We released that this morning and not only made the arrest, but also seized some firearms and some narcotics as well. These are things that we haven't seen in the last few months. As you know, over the last several months, we've focused and have conducted a lot of operations with CHP, with some other allied agencies to focus on that, street racing and those sideshow takeover type events. We haven't seen one of those in a while, but basically what occurs is 300 or 400 cars will show up at one intersection or in a neighborhood, completely block it from every single direction, and have an opening space in the middle where they drive recklessly and engage in other types of criminal conduct. It has got to be incredibly frightening for a community member to be trapped in the middle of that, and we know that there were some this weekend. Some had their cars vandalized, and in the past events, some similar things that occurred. It is not recreational. It is not in any way activity that should be on our streets. And we take very seriously these things that are occurring. But from a practical response, when an officer shows up, as did Saturday, several officers showing up, getting hit with rocks and bottles and things like that. And so you have to wait for additional resources to come in to be able to deal with that. We had an officer hit by a car at one of the intersections as well. Thankfully, he was not injured. But it was, again, something that we hadn't seen in the last several months. Part of the reason we've had these efforts with CHP and others to be aggressive in preventing some of this type of activity here. We will be following up from this weekend, looking at videos that we have, looking at social media, identifying vehicles and identifying operators or those that have participated in this event. And from this weekend, some of the individuals that we arrested were actually involved in organizing it this past weekend.
Thank you so much, Chief, and it should not be happening, but we really appreciate your follow-up. Assemblyman Fong reached out to me on Saturday about this, but I'll give him an update, and thank you for all your efforts. Sure. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, thank you so much for the presentation. Thank you, Chiefs Hale and Stratton also. And I appreciate all the work that you're doing. I mean, there are a lot of issues facing our city, and BPD is on the front lines responding on various different fronts, and I really appreciate all the effort. I'm going to start with where the mayor led. You know, these sideshows are pathetic. They're obviously dangerous, and they need to go away. It needs to stop. We're not going to put up with this. As we talk about this budget, what do we need in additional resources to curb this? I know Councilmember Parlier has been an advocate to providing additional resources and other solutions to respond to this, but what happened Saturday night cannot happen again.
I agree with you. Let's talk through that a little bit. We feel your support, I would say, over the last several years, and I want the council to know that we are very appreciative of the support that you provide to us and the resources that you've provided. And you're continuing to do that. Resources, we are talking about staffing, and we're working on that as aggressively as we possibly can. That is a key element to this. But you've also supported the drone program. We utilize those in these proactive operations. We've utilized drones to limit putting officers in bad situations, and we're able to deploy other strategies to get them at other locations where they're not so much in a crowd. And we've been very successful doing that, specifically using some of the drones. That is an important piece or a resource that we're utilizing to combat this. but also working with CHP, working with the district attorney's office. I mean, we're able to go, if we're able to identify a vehicle by a license plate, we can go and have evidence that it participated in that. We may not be able to identify the driver or the owner of the car or confirm that they're participating in it, but we can go and seize the car for a period of time. We're trying to pull every single lever that we can to do that. At the end of the day, it doesn't stop the individual who participated in that event, but it removes them having access to their car for a period of time. We are using videos and following up to file the charges for reckless operation and interfering and all of those other things, that other associated crimes that come with this type of activity. We're trying to do it holistically on every level, pull every lever that we can. The enforcement side, the staffing side, the legal side, getting prosecution through the district attorney's office, leveraging the other resources like I talked about with drones. We're really trying to leverage everything that we can to combat this. The challenge for us is, one of them is, it just shows up out of nowhere. 300 or 400 cars, vast majority not from our community, show up, and this is what we had over the night. Most of the people that we arrested were not from Bakersfield. And this is a challenge that we have, and that goes right to the heart of trying to prevent what you're talking about, is having enough resources standing by and ready to combat this when it shows up. Yeah, we're able to marshal up, but it takes some time, and the other effect is it removes all of these resources from all across the city. So it does take every resource that we have on the street to be able to do with crowds this large. And so it happens infrequently, but when it does, it is serious, and we're taking it that way, and trying to pull every lever we can when they do occur.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the communication yesterday, and Chief Stratton and I were in communication throughout the day yesterday talking about this incident, and I appreciate that effort and keeping me in the loop. And in turn, I've been engaged with lots of different residents and Oleander who were, you pointed out, many people were caught in the middle of it. Other people were pretty jarred. So know that if there are ideas in terms of technology or other supports or tools that would be helpful, I am on board. And I think the rest of my colleagues would be as well, at least I would hope. And but please bring them back to us as quickly as possible. We want to be as supportive as possible.
And we feel your support, not only on this issue, but on many, and I have no doubt. And if I have an idea, I will certainly bring it back to you as soon as I possibly can. But again, it's important from our perspective as well, for the community to know that it's not lost on us the impact of this. And there are many public safety issues that our community is being impacted by. And it's not lost on us the impact that it has on the daily life of many of our residents in our neighborhoods. And we are, again, trying to approach things holistically and trying to pull every lever possible to engage in a broad way as much as we can to resolve so many of the issues that are facing our community.
Thank you, Chief. Next topic, the training facility. I've had a chance to visit a few times now, and so I'm full support of those facility upgrades. You know, some critics and detractors out there in the community say, well, we should have built something new, something bigger, and that would accommodate more trainees. And while I think it's important to look at that in the future, I think we all need to recognize that the facility we have today and what we built a few years ago was essential to help us get to that goal that we set of 100 net gain of officers. And so what we've done there has been very creative, innovative, and I appreciate us just finding solutions to get towards, you know, those 6 academies already. And so kudos to you and the team, and certainly the city manager's office and all those support, you know, departments that have made that happen.
Thank you.
The dispatch center, I appreciate the additional staff there. Are there forms of technology that would also be helpful in terms of communication or improving the performance at the dispatch center? As I was there during the committee visit, there was, I forget who made mention of perhaps some sort of scrolling marquee or other technology that would help communication as incidents occur. And I wondered if you've looked into that and what the analysis was.
We are looking into it currently, and that has been the feedback from the staff, being able to, our radio system is split, so you have dispatchers that are dispatching the east side of town and another dispatcher that is dispatching the west side of town. And so they're not necessarily hearing everything that's going on the other side of town from them. And so part of the feedback from the staff that you heard was some sort of scrolling information or display monitors where we could put vehicles up, you could put someone's name, you could put a picture of a missing child or a missing person, and that information to be readily available to everybody in the communication center, so that when a call came in, that would be another resource that a dispatcher or a call taker could look at to get information about and handling of the call. That's the perspective that's been shared with us from staff, and so we're looking at what's the best way to do that, where to position that in the room, et cetera.
So as we look at this year's budget, is there a line item or some money set aside for some upgrades in technology? Mr. Clegg?
Councilmember Gonzalez, there are a number of line items that are related to specific projects in technology services, and they'll speak to some of those in just a few minutes. There are not sort of a line item for other miscellaneous projects, but my understanding in conversation with the chief is I think these can be worked within our operating, at least the item that you're speaking of is likely to be able to be worked into our operating budget. And if not, then we'll come back to council.
And Councilmember Gonzalez, I can add a little bit to that. We have a technology grant that we received the year before last that really is, we're developing now an internal and external communication.
Mm-hmm.
This can have elements where we will have kiosks in the lobbies of our police departments for direct community engagement, but there's also an internal side of this grant that we are working on in this program to enhance the communication internally, and the communication center is part of that.
Great. Sounds great. Flock cameras. I know we just deployed it within the last year, but do we have any analysis on effectiveness of that particular technology?
It is proving to be very effective. We have made numerous arrests for homicides, stolen vehicles, a variety of crimes directly related to information that was captured in the flock cameras. And so I just had conversations last week with some of the other department heads from Technology Services, Rec and Park, Economic Development, and we're going to be meeting to discuss a strategy that we might be able to implement and bring a proposal to the manager's office so that we can integrate these systems and this technology across several of the departments. But it is proving to be very successful for us, and we're also looking at opportunities to expand it as well.
Great, and I was just going to say that. I think that if it's proven to be effective, I would certainly hope that we can expand this throughout the downtown core, throughout areas where we have a higher frequency of pedestrians and bicyclists and people who are just out and about on the streets that can have assist you. So I'd like to see that. And then finally, this question really is for Mr. Clegg. You know, we're talking about police department response, you know, as crimes, after crimes occur, or as crimes are occurring. I know there's some efforts with regards to CalVIP grant to do some intervention work. But as we look at the trends, and we heard the presentation at our last council meeting in terms of the rising crime, in particular the rise in violence in some of our neighborhoods, or actually throughout the city, but particularly in disadvantaged neighborhoods. What are your thoughts in terms of how we're going to prevent crime in the future? What are some of the strategies that we can invest in today to help us prevent crime over the next 5-10 years?
Councilmember Gonzalez and Council, this is an interesting question we could spend a long time on, but I'll be as succinct as possible. If you think about economic development, I think of that as crime prevention. If you think about quality of life, I think that's also crime prevention. There are, though, many who study crime prevention and particularly crime intervention, and that you can fairly successfully trace back factors that lead to vulnerability towards crime. And I think those are actually quite similar to many individuals experiencing homelessness, I would suggest as well. And so there are some programs that we should pursue that are very targeted to very specific types of crime. For example, our gun violence intervention program, there are specific strategies that are, evidence informed and well proven to have impacts. And so we need to pursue those types of programs. In the PSVS budget, there are some dollars to also that are proposed to identify some additional programs beyond gun violence intervention programs for other crime prevention programs that have proven track records, like childhood literacy is one example. And so I see us pursuing some of those targeted programs to be very specific and target some very specific outcomes. That's one bucket. Another bucket, though, is to continue to get at community transformation. So when we look at our EOA grant program, when we look at some of the community revitalization dollars that we're spending, when we look at state granting programs for disadvantaged neighborhoods, those are all, in my mind, community transformation really is the heart of crime prevention in the long run. And so we do need to pursue specific programs that are targeted to specific issues and outcomes, but then continue working at this quality of life and neighborhood transformations for our more urban neighborhoods and business districts.
Great. Thank you. Thanks again, Chief. And thank you to your whole team.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gonzalez. Just going back to the car sideshows, is there a proliferation of car sideshows in other communities, or are we experiencing this to a greater degree, and for what reason?
No, they travel up and down the state. So that's why we're seeing a large number of them from different communities spread through social media, but it is something that it is not unique to us. Other communities are experiencing it.
Thank you, Chief. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate the good work. Shot spotter, you talked about how that helps, get to the community because people don't want to talk about the homicides or the people that they know. Have you seen how that's helping open people up yet?
Yeah, we are seeing
Building trust.
Yes, Councilmember Smith, thank you for the question. We are seeing some increases in the so when ShotSpotter first started, probably about 12 or 13% of the calls that came into the communication center, let me start it this way. Only in about 12 or 13% of the ShotSpotter notifications that we received was there a call from the public. So it was a very low, it really confirmed what we had believed all along, that many of these communities hear about this gunfire and they just don't report it. And so when ShotSpotter was installed, it confirmed that, because only about 12 or 13% of those ShotSpotter activations had a call for service. I think it was in March of this year, February, March of this year, it was over 20% for that month that we had callers actually come in. I think over the history of the program, it's probably increased about 5 or 6% in total. But we are seeing some increases. We're also seeing it when officers are out there. The community members are seeing the officers investigating the incident, and that's where very important engagement is taking place as well. We also have a program where we go and follow up afterwards and go knock on doors and do some follow-up even when we don't make an arrest or we didn't see anything or didn't have a community member call. And through some of that engagement, we are sending the message that we were aware of this incident, we do care, and we're responding to it. So we have seen some successes in that respect.
Great. You mentioned the presentation that you and the DA gave a couple weeks ago. The crime peaked in the early 90s, I think, and pointed out, the changes in laws and the changes in attitude, how we address things. But I was thinking, really, those trends are national, not just California, and we spoke about California laws. And I know even now the homicides and crime nationally are up. I can't put my finger on it. I read a lot. Any analysis?
Are you looking for a magic answer?
I'm looking for. Well, we've talked about just the societal negativity and stuff, but, you know, those trends are national trends, and
we've seen similar trends, even looking at our own history over the last decade or more. You can see the rolling, you can see spikes, you can see the sort of the evolving nature of crime spike and reduce. And some of it is directly tied to some legislation that Ms. Zimmer provided examples of. That's absolutely true, and we've seen that here locally. But that's really why our approach has been to try to identify not only engaging the community in a much stronger way than we ever have before, positioning ourselves to be in contact and develop those relationships because they're important, but it's also to, in a much stronger way, identify what some of the root causes are. I mean, there are so many things that at its core, well, there are so many things that a police officer goes to every single day that at its core, a police officer never could address. There's there's some foundational element that we could never address. And so until that gets addressed, we're going to have to engage. And that's why we've worked to try to build partnerships and collaborate in different ways so that we can begin trying to identify what some of those root causes are so that we can deal with some of the spikes that sort of seem to naturally occur as the growth and technology. You know, there's a variety of things that contribute to that. That are far outside of policing control. But that's why we've really tried to be creative so that we can address these things in a variety of different ways to flatten that out as much as possible while we all at the same time remain very proactive and aggressive in arresting people when they commit crimes and harm the community and work with the prosecutor to follow through with those. We are aggressively doing that, but at the same time we're also trying to and we also recognize that there are so many other public safety issues that we can't address alone. And we need somebody else to come to the table, and that's what we're looking for to really try to flatten those trends out.
Yeah, appreciate the community working together. You mentioned the red light cameras, and I'm a big backer of that and appreciate that. I look at your numbers, and there's over 700, I think, last week, red light violations. And I think the more, the better on that. The employee wellness program you've had up and running for a little bit now. Any data how that's helping yet?
You want to talk about that a little bit?
So I can touch base on it a little bit from a broad perspective, looking at the data over the last 10 years. Every year, the city has the top 5 injuries: knee, shoulder, back, heart, stress. And every year, there's a couple $1 million that are paid out in risk management related claims for taking care of our employees. So it's really a little bit too soon to see whether we're going to see a corresponding decrease in the data as it relates to what those injuries are. But being able to have a dedicated employee that this is what they do is being able to stay in contact, focus, work with risk, ensuring that we're getting employees to their appointments, looking at a lot of preventative related stuff, been able to send to training for health related stuff, mental health related issues. There's been a variety of different nonprofits that we've been able to work with on counseling and emotional support, trying to prevent, but we're really focusing on those 5 specific areas to see if we can see a corresponding decrease. So anecdotally at this point, we've been able to get information about an increased acceptance of services and working on the increased number of fitness events, but looking at kind of a physical fitness, a mental fitness, you know, the emotional component, working with our chaplain program as well. And so just a really kind of a comprehensive approach. So I think, like I said, it's a little bit too soon to be able to see whether they've seen the corresponding decrease, but I feel very, very confident that over time we're going to see that decrease, and then the retention of our employees. So if we can see a slowing of some of the exodus in some of those areas, I really think that's where we're going to see get our return on our investment.
Great. Appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned the off-road vehicles, and I'm just wondering, you talked about the river. In the past, we had bike path patrol. Is that connected?
It is. And so part of these vehicles will be to transport staff into some of these areas and can do a variety of different types of patrols, but also to, if we make arrest or need to bring people out, that we have the capacity to do that. These couple of vehicles will enable us to do that. We don't currently have that capacity to be able to transport large numbers of resources, officers in or suspects out of some of these remote areas or more remote areas. But part of it will also be able to use to transport some of that type of equipment to areas and make for more efficient, either doing local patrols on a bike in a smaller area or more broadly being able to just more effectively have a presence in some of these areas that it's difficult to get to.
Great. The 300,000 items that you can dispose of,
Yes.
what kind of percentage of total is that?
Boy, that is a very good question. I do not know the answer to that, but it is a variety of things. Gosh, do you have any idea what the quantity is? I turn to Assistant Chief Hale because that's under his command, but I think, yeah, I have no idea what the total number of items in the property room are. That's an interesting question. I'll find out.
Okay, appreciate that. That's all I have. Thanks for the work.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. And then we'll go to Councilmember Parlier and Arias, and we will take a break after this just for those of you who are hanging on. Councilmember Parlier.
Thanks, Mayor. Well, Chief, God knows it's a tough environment now, but your department does an excellent job for the city of Bakersfield, and you really deserve our thanks and appreciation. So please pass that on to your team.
I will. Thank you.
So the slideshow thing, since you said people are coming in from out of state, and I know we monitor social media and social media locally, but we're a big department now. Do we have intelligence type apparatus within the police department? I'm sure we probably do with gangs and stuff, but for social media that we can maybe get ahead of the curve on some of this stuff so it's not necessarily a surprise, or maybe you're already doing that?
Councilmember Parlier, we do have a presence on social media for the department, and that also means that we are monitoring what occurs, looking for when we appear, looking for locations, looking for the name of the city. There's a variety of different things that we're looking for on social media. On the criminal side, certainly in the gangs and gun violence, we're very useful in that, but we also do have that same capacity or same activity, not at the level that we would like to. One of the outcomes of having this communications coordinator, this new position that we're asking for, is going to increase our capacity, not only presence proactively on social media, but a better professional understanding of how to do this work. But also, we are, by the nature of these types of events when they occur, we're learning from them as well. And so we are finding different ways to have a presence in the areas that we need to online so that we can become better aware of the conversations that are happening. I know I'm sorry, it's kind of vague, but...
No, that's fine, Chief. I get it. And we're still in a transition. You know, we're going from a small, now we're large, and we are headed into a metropolis type, law enforcement agency. And
I'm trying to be intentional about what I say.
No, I get it too. But I think we need to look at potentially, some sort of dedicated intelligence apparatus with, to look at a host of things, including this, whether you are or not. I don't want to give up any of your, deployment strategies, but the same, maybe it's something to look at. Motors, where do we stand on motor complement?
If all of the equipment comes in, we'll have this year, by the end of this year, we'll have 18 motors deployed.
That's good. From zero. And when we start that? Was it 2 years ago or 3?
About 3 years ago.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you think 18 will? That's where we need to be at, or I know back in the day, BPD had like 25 or 30 when the population was like 150,000. So
no, I would anticipate that we'll have additional requests that will come before you. This is the right number for us to be able to keep pace and have people trained and to be able to deploy them. So for right now, that is the right number to get us through the end of this year. But I anticipate that there would be some additional requests come in because they are so effective in a variety of traffic enforcement issues. But our ability to staff and deploy them, this is the right number for now.
Okay. But even the sideshows, they're just able to get into certain areas that a unit can't.
It would be extremely dangerous for a motor officer to go into that environment. And so...
Well, not necessarily one, but multiple officers.
Yes, in some respects it would be, but Those things are sort of like going into a tornado. I mean,
Right.
it has its own weather, and you can get overwhelmed very quickly. And so we have to be very strategic in how we've approached it. But there's no question that their versatility is really, really important.
Now, when you talk about motors, compared to an officer being in a vehicle or an SUV, where you just have more tools available because it's a bigger vehicle, but it's a dangerous environment that we face, sideshows and a host of other things. And I'm not going to pin you down specifics, but if we can look at ensuring that they have all the tools that they need on those, including the potential of, having a long gun if they show up on a scene, especially when we're talking about, 18 or more officers, not necessarily in a vehicle that would have that type of equipment normally, and they're on a motorcycle, they're somewhat at a disadvantage depending on what they show up to.
We are doing that now, and in fact, we are exploring and have plans to find a way for a motor officer to have a drone as well, to
wonderful.
be able to deploy.
The last thing, and it's really not for you, Chief, I guess it's more towards Christian, I guess in your team too, because it does affect us. It affects us as a city. We could add 100 new officers, maybe 200 new officers, and we're still at the mercy of the county and what they do with the people that we arrest. And that is really the weak link. And there has to be some sort of plan and solution for that. I'm really not sure what it's going to be, but if we have 200 new officers on the street and 200 new criminals that are released in 5 minutes, it really doesn't do us that much good. So there definitely needs to be some sort of forward-looking strategy.
Thank you, Councilmember, and if I may respond, because it's a very good point. And we've tried to communicate to the community that we'll absolutely do our best to play our role, but many factors at the state level as well as at the county level have significant impacts on criminal justice system and our ability to have accountability for public safety. You'll note that there's a $2 million set aside in the PSVS proposed budget that is designed to be some available funding for a regional partnership amongst many partners here to get at that very issue. I use that language again, as Chief did, intentionally, because we don't have it all pinned down, but we are in conversations and working towards a solution we can bring back to respective elected officials within the region to look at a regional approach that tries to get at that big gap, because it is staring us right in the face.
Thanks, Christian. Thanks, Chief.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilmember Parlier. Councilmember Arias.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief. I certainly do not envy the position that you and our officers are in each and every day, grinding away to protect our city. So please, again, extend my sincere thanks to
Thank you.
everyone on your team. Really excited that we've been able to bring on 83 new sworn officers so far. What was the target number that we were looking at? Was it 508 total complement sworn officers?
That's what it will be with this proposed budget, yes.
Okay, fantastic. And so I guess that alludes to my question. The public's expectation, I think, was that by the end of 2021, we would have those new officers. What is our new target timeline and deadline for ourselves to get to that number?
To get to the 100?
Correct.
Okay. Well, I'll put it on my crystal ball here, and but no, I'm really excited about that, and I appreciate the question. Although I can't give you an exact date, but help is on the way, and I think over the next year or so is when we're really going to be able to in a much greater way, the community not only begin to feel our growth, because we started this 3 years ago with no infrastructure, and to just go out and hire, and it takes 18 months to hire somebody and get them working anyway. So I think it is incredible, the fact that we've been able to hire 200 officers over a 2.5-year period. It's just phenomenal. and the work between the police department and HR and the support of the council and other city departments, it's amazing that we've made that much progress. And so there are things that are outside of our control, sort of, that have impacted us not making the 100. But we have 33 in the academy now that will graduate in September. We have another academy that will begin in October, and then one after in 2023. I am very optimistic that we're going to be able to reach that number because of the infrastructure, the things that we've talked about in previous meetings and presentations about the recruitment website, and the real laundry list of things that Director Tinter talked about, the infrastructure that had been built to plan for, bring on, and be able to strategically recruit and process this number of applicants. That had to be built. And so even with that timeline or the lead time that would be required to really create a big infrastructure, we've still made tremendous progress. And so I am very optimistic that we'll meet that number within the next year, perhaps even by the end of 2023, with the academies and all that we are trying to do to bring them on. Can't promise it, but I am very optimistic about it and feel very grateful that we have the resources that we have and that we've made as much progress that we have.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chief. I appreciate that. And don't want my question to make it seem like I'm not appreciative of all the work that
I know.
our department has done and HR has done. I think we've done a fantastic job at building that infrastructure, doing as much possible outreach. I myself have engaged a number of folks, both on the streets, even within City Hall, who I think would be perfect candidates for the positions that we have available. So thank you guys for all that you do. Switching gears to the clinicians in dispatch, what does the process look like for someone who is experiencing a mental health emergency? We get a call in 911 dispatch, but maybe they speak Spanish or Punjabi. How are we triaging that and making sure that they're getting those services?
We have some language resources that we use within the comm center that we can directly connect with and use for interpretation. Spanish is more readily available even within the department in the comm center, but the other languages that come in, we use an outside source, a third party, to provide that translation service to us, and it can be provided immediately and directly within the communication center.
Okay, fantastic. Let's see. Also, just really excited about the crisis call diversion program. We are now officially moving from a pilot program to something that is fully staffed and ready to go, that will hopefully, as long as everyone stays healthy, get us 24/7 coverage. So I am just so incredibly excited about that partnership. I want to tip my hat off to you and your team, working with Stacy over there at Bakersfield Health and Recovery Services, because that truly is a fantastic program and a great investment for our community. With regard to the street racing and the sideshows, out of those 8 arrests, how many of them were local and how many were from out of the area? Do we know?
2 local, 6 from Fresno, Clovis, and Los Angeles.
Okay, so
Fresno, Clovis, and Los Angeles.
A large majority from outside. Okay. I think we're all incredibly frustrated, reflective of what the community is telling us. And I think it's important that I know we're looking at different opportunities, but I think we should open up the discussion, in safe neighborhoods. And I would actually like to make a referral. Let's bring back some ideas on, are there other ordinances that other cities have implemented to hold these individuals accountable to a greater extent of the law? Is it additional technology resources that we can bring to the table that will be helpful in these types of situations? Is it expanding the collaborative so that we can have maybe a motorcade present in addition to some of our officers? I think that we've got to do more. And so I just want to explore those with you and your team, and happy to bring that back to Safe Neighborhoods.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Arias. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple quick questions. Since State of California and the Department of Justice has stuck their nose into our business, I'm wondering what effect that has on what you're doing in the department right now. I mean, is there any positive to it? Is it negative? And what costs are we incurring right now in this current budget just because of them?
Councilmember Weir, thank you for the question. When we had this conversation about the entering into the agreement, much of what we are doing and have been doing is in line with the agreement. A lot of the things that we were going to be doing is sort of the direction the department was headed. There's nothing in this budget directly that is a direct cost of that yet.
Okay.
There is some things coming as we, this year in this first year of the agreement, we're really revising policies. We're building the infrastructure that will come in the future years. There will be some cost in next year for some staffing, perhaps some technology that will streamline some of these things, but it'll be more so reflected in cost of staffing in the future years.
Staffing that we wouldn't have ordinarily needed?
Some, yes. In order to comply with some of the oversight and accountability mechanisms that will be in the agreement, it will necessitate some additional staffing at the management and command level rank that would not necessarily have come just from normal department growth. It is important in the respect that we're building a variety of these accountability mechanisms throughout the department, and those are important for the department's performance and liability and a variety of other things. But there will be some direct positions related to the agreement that we would not have normally done, probably beginning next year.
So we'll see that in the next budget cycle?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And Christian, this is really for you. I know we've talked about the phone system and we've talked about it a long time, but is there anything we can talk about that phone? No, the radio system. I mean, the radio system. Is there anything that we could talk about tonight, or is this not the place that we should be talking about that? Or give me, in all of us, kind of a little update on it.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Mayor. The look on my face was the phone versus the radio.
I understand. I got it. You just didn't get it quick enough. So,
so yeah, the radio system, the request for proposals that the city and the county put out jointly is actually still in process and being vetted out. We've had some dialogue about the best path forward for the city, but that process, just so the council knows, has continued forward, at least to score the two vendors that did submit proposals through that RFP. There will be a decision point this summer for the city to determine how we want to move forward, if it's within that process or otherwise. My feedback would be that as, again, this process has been protracted, I'm thinking 5 years in the making, and that some of the timing continues to increase our sort of worry over our existing systems. So our system today is being patched together, and we also have some areas of the city inside large concrete buildings that our radio frequency doesn't reach some of our officers. And so I would just say, yes, time is of the essence to move forward. But we'll have some analysis on what options are on the table just in the next few months, and then what's our best path forward from there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, and I don't see any other requests to speak. Chief, thank you so much for the ongoing community outreach. We were talking earlier about the root issues, and I see the partnerships developing, the big outreach on Saturday combined with FBI and so many community people. Over 70 different groups coming together. So thank you all, and thank you to the community relations team also for that. Let's take a break and come back about 2:33.
Begin with slide number 1, which is what we typically start with, which is our organizational chart. As you can see, the city attorney and the city manager are the only two employees that report directly to you. For the rest of the organizational chart, you can see underneath the city attorney, we have a vacant assistant city attorney position that has been open for some time. We rely heavily on outside counsel, which I'll go through in just a minute. We have 3 deputy city attorneys, and I'm pleased to tell you that today was the first day for a new associate city attorney, Elizabeth Villanueva, so we have high hopes with her and very happy to have her on board. We still have an opening for a deputy city attorney. Andrew, as I mentioned, is our administrative assistant. We have a senior legal secretary, 1 legal secretary, and also a vacancy there. I thought you'd enjoy this slide. It's relatively new. Andrew put it together in order of population, and it just really shows you the different, it's a combination of top 10 cities as well as comparable cities by population, and it shows you how many attorneys they have within their city attorney's offices. And as you really take a look at Fresno with the high population and Santa Monica at the end, and they both have an excess of 25 attorneys. And I'm not using this slide to tell you that we need 25 attorneys in the city attorney's office, but what I am trying to show to you is that when I tell you that we're lean, that's probably an extreme understatement when you look at that chart. As you know, with outside counsel, we rely heavily on them. Our tort cases are with Clifford & Brown. You have them under contract until July of 2025. Our civil rights cases are with Mick and Heather Cohen, again through July of 2025. And our water matters are handled with Dwayne Morris, again through 2023, and that's primarily with Colin Pierce. In the city attorney's office, in terms of municipal accomplishments last year, we spend most of our time with ordinances, resolutions, and transactional advice, particularly on those 5 bullets within the last fiscal year. More recently with the park ranger program, as you know, the redistricting process, and the new decorum policy. We also, though, do handle some litigation in-house, primarily to make sure that our deputies and our new associate maintain their legal skills, their civil litigation skills, and that they become well-rounded general practitioners, which is needed in our office. We did, however, close 6 state litigation matters with no monies being paid by the taxpayers. There was a stipulated judgment that was handled by V.D. King, which awarded the city $5,000, and Councilmember Parlier, that was in your ward, when it came to GIC trucking, which, as you recall, has been somewhat of an issue for a couple of years. We continue to represent the police department in pitches motions, and we have responded to close to 30 requests, primarily with the ACLU, on the new laws relative to police personnel records and SB 1421. Again, many members think that public attorneys do not track their time. That is not true in the city of Bakersfield. We have tracked our time for many, many years. This is a great pie chart that shows you where most of that time is spent. It is spent primarily with development services. That's land use. That's great for us in the city of Bakersfield with your police department, as well as recently with the city manager's office. And again, remember that office also encompasses the city clerk as well as risk management. In terms of the outside counsel, excuse me, and the litigation accomplishments, they closed 2 cases and 14 state cases, 7 of them with 0 monies being paid by the city. Again, I thought this was a nice slide just to kind of show you that during COVID, it was somewhat quiet, and we expected an uptick and did get that uptick in 2020 and 2021. You can see there was 20 new personal injury lawsuits filed against the city. 19 so far this year, and probably we'll get a little bit more before the close of the fiscal year. This pie chart skews it just a little because we're only talking about 21 cases, but again, you can see they're primarily with your trip and falls on our sidewalks and our motor vehicles, and accidents involving motorcycles and bicycles. For the upcoming budget, the budget being projected is a little over $2.4 million. It is a very small increase of approximately $70,000 over last year. It again primarily is within the salary and benefit line item. There is a small amount left over of $21,000, which Andrew and I decided to put that into our legal services line item account, which is used to reimburse outside counsel for those legal items that are not incurred under the cap. Our posture for next year remains the same with regard to litigation as well as municipal. The only new thing on there really is to continue the recruitment for the assistant city attorney as well as the deputy city attorney. And with that, I'm open for your questions.
Thank you. That was so well done and so quickly done. I don't see any requests. Oh, Councilmember Parlier. Who was that?
Yeah, I deserve a raise with the speed and brevity of that one, Jenny.
Thank you.
5
Make sure
minutes.
you record that, Madam Clerk.
I wrote it 5 minutes.
You do a great job.
Thank
Thanks
you.
again to you and your team.
Mayor and council will move next to finance.
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor, council members. I timed that, so that was 5 minutes and 41 seconds.
It was.
I thought I could beat the city attorney, but I don't think I'm going to get there. But I'll give her a run for her money right now. So
Oh.
yeah, I'm starting, and it's too late now. I'm wasting time. So glad to be able to present the budget for the upcoming fiscal year for the finance department. Wonderful to be here, and thank you for the opportunity. So let's start off by looking at our organizational chart. City's finance department is broken up into 4 separate divisions, distinct divisions. The Treasury Division handles cash receipts, handles our investment portfolio, also reviews transactions related to transient occupancy taxes and business licenses, to review them to make sure that they're accurate, and also ensure adequate revenue recovery. We have an finance division related to accounting division related to accounts payable, receivables, payroll. They handle our general ledger and issue our annual reports. Our purchasing division handles procurement, handling many contracts related to services, materials and supplies, infrastructure contracts that we help the departments, various departments procure. We have a real property division that handles adding additional properties related to various projects that the city needs, whether it be water wells, infrastructure projects, parks, and also we've been continuing to actually more recently been looking for additional space as the city grows. And then you'll see there we actually added an admin analyst in the middle of this last fiscal year. This individual is an important individual that will be helping handle significant or major fiscal projects, specifically project manager for our ERP project, which we'll touch on later. So as we move forward, this is the current complement of employees, or actually a history of our complement of employees since 2010-11. So you'll see that we had 33 this last fiscal year. That is the increase from the admin analyst I just mentioned. And we actually are asking for an increase of 1 individual, a payroll technician, for the upcoming fiscal year. That would put our complement of payroll staffing to 4. This individual is needed because of the increased complexity of handling payroll. I mean, we have 4 individuals handling payroll for over 1,700 employees. The complexity related to PERS, the complexity related to industrial claims, public safety payments continue to be more complex. So we were asking for that individual to be covered by the general fund. That will be an increase of about $90,000 to the general fund ongoing. Beyond org charts and complement bar charts, I mean, I want to really point out that we have 32 individuals currently working hard to accomplish the goals of finance, help other departments reach their goals, and obviously help the council meet its goals as we go through the year. These photos were taken just this last week during Employee Appreciation Week. These individuals are dedicated, and they actually enjoy their work, and they enjoy coming in and providing those services to the public. And we talked about goals. I want to really, before I go into the accomplishments of the department and our goals going forward, I really want to focus on the fact that the department really, our work really focuses primarily on council goal number 3, that idea of maintaining fiscal solvency. So as you know, that that goal really focuses on the idea of having a stable economic environment, continually improving our systems, our operations, and really evaluating our system so that we are effective in operation and good stewards of taxpayer funds. So as we move forward, looking at our accomplishments, it really is looking back at where we are, trying to meet those that specific council goal number 3 of maintaining fiscal solvency. So this last year, we were able to continue working towards funding that retiree medical trust. We currently have over $90 million in that trust, which puts us at over 77% funded of a liability of $116 million based on our last actuarial. Again, that's historically, we began funding that at 15 years ago in 2007, and again, it was 0% funded at that time, and we've moved it up to close to 80%. We continue to strive to build on that and get that funded more fully. This last year, building on the success of the OPEB trust, we through the council were able to establish a pension rate stabilization trust. So it's kind of building on that same idea of building a trust that will address, in this case, the pension unfunded pension liability that currently sits at over $500 million. This council approved a $4 million allocation to that trust in March, and we made that actual payment actually last week. And so we will continue to anticipate that we will be making those allocations every year. We don't anticipate that we'll be able to fund it at the same level of success as the OPEB trust, because that OPEB trust is a medical trust is a closed system. But this does allow us to have flexibility. Those funds can be used to make future contributions during lean years. And we also will create some independence, not relying on the returns that CalPERS earns every year. And then we continue to fund our city reserves. As you know, in 2019, we approved a reserve plan that allowed us to move towards having a rainy day reserve of up to 2 months worth of the general fund operating costs. We were able to meet that reserve goal last year, and currently the rainy day reserve is a little over $49 million. We were also able to, this last year, build up our facility reserves, adding $1 million there. So we have over $55 million in reserves that we were able to establish this last year. And again, we continue to deal with and report on our ARPA allocation, the American Rescue Plan Act. As council knows, we received an allocation from the federal government last year. We received the first tranche of it in April of last year, and we expect the second half of that this coming month, actually. And so we continue to report on that. The city finance department is helping departments really build on their plans for the upcoming years that these funds should be spent. The expectation is that there's going to be a close eye kept by the federal government on these funds. So we're really working with them to make sure that they're in compliance with the final rules that the Department of Treasury issued. So we continue to track those and are accounting for them and helping departments prepare programs for it. And finally, the big item that we continue to move towards is the ERP, the Enterprise Resource Planning Software Replacement. We've made some significant progress on this project this last year. We received proposals, we reviewed those proposals. We went through various software demonstrations, analyzed our options, and ultimately selected a vendor this last week, actually. So this last week, we will begin entering into some negotiations for the replacement of Naviline with a system called Oracle Cloud. That project is moving forward, and by July, we anticipate that the contract will be in place. So building off of that, as we look forward to the upcoming fiscal year, we will be building plans for that ERP implementation. It's an 18-month project. The first year of that, we anticipate we'll have a complete, or at least the majority of the financial and budget-related aspects of that ERP in place within 12 months. It's a 2-phase project, though, with 6 months from that point. 6 months from the start, we anticipate we'll begin the HR and payroll-related aspects of that. So we anticipate that final implementation to be completed by January 2024. So we are going to be building an understanding of the needs of the departments, and each individual department will be helping us establish the software needs and receive training, and then ultimately, as I said, have an implementation complete in 18 months. We will continue to prepare financial reports. We issue financial reports every year for the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, issuing that hopefully by the end of this upcoming calendar year and qualifying for a GFOA award for that. We also have annual reports required for the federal dollars we spend. It's called the single audit. We also have state reports, state controller reports that we have to issue, both a street report and a financial report that we were required to submit. And then per the PSVS goals, we have to issue a PSVS annual report, making sure that all of the activity of PSVS are within the 13 guidelines of the program that was approved by the voters. We will continue to manage the reserves. So in the current year budget, the proposed budget for the upcoming year, we're not asking for an allocation yet, but as I mentioned, we met the two-month goal last year, and we continue to maintain that. But around the middle of this year, we'll look at the budget, look at what's available as we close out the fiscal books for this current fiscal year, and then determine what we can allocate, whether we want to continue to fund the reserves at 2 months, if we want to increase it, and also move towards funding, increasing the funding of the facility reserves with the goal of building a $10 million reserve. Again, I mentioned earlier, it's about $5.5 million currently. I also anticipate that we'll be presenting to council a plan to ultimately approve to build a funding plan for reserves, including our pension trust, that will, in essence, build benchmarks and earmarks for the funding of our reserves based on available fund balance at the end of each fiscal year, that will allow us to trigger contributions to the reserves and our various reserves as we move forward and then, again, close out our year. And then finally, we're going to continue to manage the ARPA funds. We anticipate that a new proposal or new report is required. It's called the Recovery Plan. We issued one when we began the project, but it's required to get updated as we move forward with the actual more solidified plans. So that is something that's available to the public. It's required to be issued per the Department of Treasury guidelines, and so we will need to update that. We'll be working with departments to, again, make sure that what's presented is in compliance with the guidance that we receive from the federal government. And finally, what makes any budget work is we're going to look at the numbers. So what you see here is the presentation of our budget compared to last year's actual cost, this current year's adopted budget, showing that we have a proposed budget of $4.6 million in the current year. That top section breaks out that budget by function, and the bottom blue section breaks out that budget by the funding streams. So I want to focus on that 11.9% increase. Again, you'll see there a $490,000 increase in expenses, primarily from personnel costs. That relates, as I mentioned, included the request of that additional position in the general fund of $90,000, but also relates to an increase in steps, reclasses of positions, and also increases in PERS costs driving that 12.85% increase in personnel services. We did have some increases in operating costs, primarily brought on by inflation and rising costs related to other outside services that will, and also insurance rates that resulted in basically a 9.5% increase in operating costs. I want to focus again on our primary funding source is the general fund. Again, a $410,000 increase in general fund costs of 12.37%. And I did want to focus in on the PSVS allocation, 101% increase. We have one position funded through PSVS dollars that did result in some increases, as I mentioned, related to step increases and pension increases. But the primary driver to that increase relates to the allocation that we actually generated in the middle of this last fiscal year that's not in our adopted budget, related to managing the Sumner Station. So we are continuing to manage the operation of that with related to maintenance and security costs as we move forward with determining what the future use for that area, that station is. So with that, that's what I have for you today. So I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Parlier.
Thanks, Mayor. Christian, here lately I've been reading and listening to some folks a lot smarter than me on the topic, thinking that there are markers that we could face a recession nationally within the next year or so. And any opportunities we can look at to pad our rainy day fund above what we've already allocated and what Council has, thought a good idea. I think it's time to even be more prudent.
Thank you, Council Member. And 2 quick thoughts on that. On the Public Safety Vital Services tax, for example, we anticipate probably $4 million in revenues that we did not recommend that we actually budget for, that we just kind of hold those in contingency in this coming year. That's the difference between what our consultants say we're going to receive and what we conservatively are budgeting lower than that. That's one piece. A second piece is we do anticipate notable year-end balances from this year, and we're actually bringing forward to the Budget and Finance Committee a recommendation for a reserve policy that would create a certain percentage allocation of unreserved year-end fund balance goes directly into our reserves. And so that'll be a conversation we'll tee up for the Budget and Finance Committee later this month, and anticipate having some significant revenues at after our books close for this current fiscal year that we would then be able to place into our reserves to bolster those.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Parlier. Any other requests to speak? I don't see any. Thank you so much. 13 minutes. It was succinct.
Yes. Thank you, Randy. And next, Christy Tenter, our Human Resources Director.
Welcome.
All right. Stopwatch on, Mayor. Human Resources loves a good goal and performance metrics, so thank you for the opportunity to present our budget this afternoon. I'm going to be walking through the Human Resources Department budget for 22-23. To start off, just a broad bucket of the core work that we do in Human Resources. Recruitment and retention includes all of the work it takes to bring someone on board, all of the job descriptions, the comping class, the hiring process, the advertising process, everything that's involved in getting that person to start. We had 10 people start today. We're excited to see our employee family grow in that way. Labor and employee relations, we engage with 3 operating represented groups, our unions, police, fire, and miscellaneous through SEIU, to talk about working conditions and opportunities for work processes. We have training and development. Again, that starts with onboarding and throughout the lifespan of the employee relationship. And then our benefit administration, which is enrollment and monitoring all of our healthcare programs, medical, vision, dental, as well as many of the initiatives that we have partnered in with departments such as police and citywide on our wellness platforms. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. The image that you see on the screen is one of the items that we put together as a core team of what really the values or the best practices of an efficient HR team are. We carry that at our desk. We hope that it is shown in all of the interactions we have with external and internal customers, and it helps us to have a common theme and common goal as we move through our day. So who are we? We're a team of 15 approved positions. We'll talk a moment about what that looks like in the broader scope of services. The 2 positions highlighted in green will be part of expanded services that we'd like to request as part of our 22-23 budget. But this, in fact, provides all human resources services. We are not a decentralized department. We provide services for all of the operating departments. We divide the house in 2 ways. We have our one side of the house is our benefits and our wellness, and our other side of the house encompasses our recruitment and employee relations. Whoops, a little fast on the click. Just a quick look back at historic staffing. 2008-9 was the highest of record, where the department had, at the time, a division of city manager's office. We had 13 allocated positions. That gave a ratio for total headcount or complement of about 1 HR individual to every 124 employees. Now, we had an economic downturn. We saw some positions on hold or not filled, and we finally got back to that 13 number by approval City Council budget in 2021, where we got back to 13, but that put us back at a ratio of 1 to 138. This year, at 15 now that we've surpassed that, ratio of 1 to 128, and we are going to be requesting 2 new positions, taking us to 17. What does that ratio mean in the broader respect? Well, there's many studies. Society for Human Resources has many formulas. Typically, they say a 1 to 100 ratio of HR employees to staff, but you can see those slightly elevated or decreased based on the type of business operations. As an example, the City of Fresno has an HR team reported in their budget of 37 employees, and they have a ratio of 1 to 105. So just give some context to the work that we're doing and providing the services throughout our organization in a numeric way. Human resources, it was best to say really the 3 primary drivers we contribute to in the City Council goals. The first is quality public services. More specifically, we shared with the chief a few meetings back on our staffing update, specifically hiring 100 police officers over a 3-year total. Now that 3-year total was 83 net employees with 218 onboarded. Specifically this year, we have held 2 BPD academies. The chief mentioned one is in progress, and we have onboarded or hired 68 that walked through the door on day 1. So making continued progress, and we'll continue to drive that initiative till we reach that 100 and whatever our new measurement is past that point. In addition to that, how have we supported that goal and provided quality public services? Well, we launched joinbpd.us. We've updated job descriptions to reflect our community and the interests and the feedback that we receive in terms of what the job duties should be. Past enforcement, but engagement with the community. We have the continuous recruitment process. We are live at all times. We've expanded advertising, not only from a diversity perspective to have more inclusion on our recruitment efforts, but also just from, again, being live and having different mediums, social media, banners across town, the vehicle that drives around that has all of our QR codes. So again, all of those efforts, more in depth, I spoke to those during our staffing update, but just a look back on what some of those were that really have contributed very strongly to hiring the officers that we have to date. In addition to that, one of our core ways to support quality public services is staffing our police and fire dispatchers. We've heard some conversation on that today already, but what have we been doing? Well, we've already conducted this fiscal year to date 4 individual recruitments, 3 for police and 1 for fire. We updated job descriptions for the police call taker to provide more growth and development. We found that sometimes people need a little more time to learn a very complex job like a dispatch job and adapt to the very high pace and emotionally charged environment. So we updated job descriptions to provide for that opportunity. We have continuous recruitment. It is open at all times. And we instituted a bonus program for police dispatchers. Again, just trying to incentivize staff coming on board. At this time, as of today, we have 36 of the 42 police dispatcher positions filled, and in fire, we have 6 of 8 positions filled and ongoing recruitment. Next opportunity for HR to drive improvement is the enhanced infrastructure. We see this in 3 ways: training, recruitment, and technology. In training, we've created jointly with the City Manager's Office an empowerment hub. We have trained this year over 50 of our executive leadership, senior leadership team in high performance government. We have talked about ways to drive efficiencies, identify, and most importantly, drive those initiatives and that language down the ladder so that we can have an organization that's focused on one common goal: efficiency. In addition to that, we have held Better Together series on a routine basis to provide more real-time training and development to our supervisory and management staff. For recruitment, have to have employees to have any type of infrastructure. We have hired 286 full-time positions to date. That number will grow by year end, but that's where we're at right now. That represents 193 recruitments and over 5,900 applications of those seeking interest in employment with the City of Bakersfield. Does not represent the promotions or laterals that we've done, but it's the highest number of recruitments we've had in a number of years. We've also launched our compensation and classification project recently as of April. We're very excited to see those results and partner together, and we'll be bringing updates back to not only our committees but the council on where that's at. For technology, again, efficiency is how do we remove paper? How do we drive ease of access for our employees at any type of career level or classification? And one, we did an automated onboarding system. So now we have department onboarding pages. We get people engaged with our organization before they start. They can do all of their paper before they start. They can be prepared with questions versus putting them through an 8-hour classroom session of filling out paperwork on day one. We want to have a more engaged and informative onboarding process for new hires. We've launched and are in the testing phase of Perform. So again, looking at how we can automate and streamline and track and have timely deliverables for our employee evaluation process. So again, having a process to evaluate efficiencies and performance. And then lastly, we've started to integrate and use Novus for our civil service agendas, which again, prior to this, were on more of a paper format and email distribution. So again, looking at infrastructure of how we can automate, create efficiencies, and have a uniform application of tools throughout the city. Last, we'll talk about how we as HR can influence and assist the promoting of community pride, image, and excellent customer service. First and foremost, we had one of our first citywide customer service sessions. We had a Be Our Guest training with the help team in the city manager's office to really talk about with our administrative personnel who are at the front, at the counters, how do you engage? How do you best approach? What are the watch-outs? So it was a really engaging session for us to be able to interact with everyone at a citywide level. Wellness initiatives. Again, we want to have those that have pride, and we can connect through wellness initiatives. We had our virtual 2020 and 2021 open enrollment process with a lot of games and engagement to get people to look at wellness initiatives, think about the healthcare choices they're making to be the most cost-effective. We have monthly Optum, that's our vendor through EAP, webinars where any employee in the city can participate in those. There are broad topics from financial wellness to personal or dietary wellness that can be accessed, and they're posted online. And then lastly, one of the most exciting things that we had under wellness was we launched the Virgin Pulse app. It is a collaborative wellness platform for all employees. We do a lot of updates on citywide programs, but we also have a lot of challenges. So everyone has daily updates. It can be, let's do a walking challenge. Let's do a stand and, have breaks at your desk. And you log these, and it can track with your electronic devices such as your phone or smartwatches. So it's been another way to really engage staff and create more community within our organization. Lastly, we have our employee incentive team, a citywide team that is made up of recognition efforts. So we just completed Public Service Recognition Week that prompted our annual employee breakfast. Very much appreciated, almost 800 in attendance, about half of our headcount came to that. We have, in addition to that, support initiatives and excellence in action throughout the year. So different drives to promote community within our organization, but to show the community, nonprofits, and individuals what we do. Go Pink Initiative, Heart Health Month. We try to get different activities for the employees to engage in. So those are the three that we really speak to when we can support the city council goals. Now for the numbers and the ask for the HR department in the coming year, we actually saw a decrease in the PSVS request of $175,000 approximately. However, we do have additional costs. So there was an offset of costs because we have not carried forward many of our initiatives. So Join BPD, many of the initiatives that we started were not ongoing expenses. So that was a decrease in our budget that we will not need moving forward. However, we are asking for the addition of one human resources clerk under PSVS. This is specifically to support police operations. Historically, we have had 2 human resources clerk support all of our recruitment efforts. At this time, because of the increase and the strategies that are required with police hiring to meet our goals, we believe that we need additional administrative report. It's also in light of the DOJ. There are a number of items under the DOJ that call for routine reporting and creation of reports on a periodic basis for the DOJ, of which this individual can help process, maintain, and update on a regular basis. So something that is new to our staff that we have not had in the past. In addition, under PSVS, $35,000, that is pre-employment exams and miscellaneous expenses. Several of our positions, such as dispatchers, we have an online exam to see if they're fit to compete for the position. Those are the prices, we have price associated with those. There's other positions where they may need a pre-employment exam or a medical exam. So the $35,000 is allocated to all of the pre-employment processes for newly requested PSVS positions by other departments. I would note that almost 80% of the operating budget for human resources is directly allocated in support of recruitment efforts or programs for divisions not encumbered to HR staff. Recruitment, DOT exams, pre-employment exams. That's the majority of the budget, almost 80%. The last request under PSVS is ESOF. This will be an ongoing cost, but will vary based on the number of police officers. POST, the Peace Officers Standards and Training, is the oversight at the state level for hiring of police officers. They have a very thick background check screening manual that we must abide by and are audited against. At this time, police officers spend anywhere from 30 to 40 hours per incumbent doing a background check. Some of that is because of extensive information that they may have to travel out of Kern County to obtain. So if I've worked for LA Sheriff, I may need to go to LA and actually physically see the file there, something that they will not send or let us or scan due to privacy rights. ESOF is new technology that's being utilized by many in California that has a secured database where many of those records will be stored electronically with high security access. So having the accessibility to say, oh, someone's applying for Burbank and Kern County, there's all the information, grab it and go, could greatly reduce our officers' time or our retired annuitants' time in performing background checks. So it really automates the process. On the general fund, we see an increase of $191,000 approximately. Again, looking to add a human resources clerk. I'll note that that's at a mid-year expense. By the time we fill everyone else's positions and post for ours and get started, we'll probably be close to mid-year before we can actually bring that incumbent on. That will backfill recruitment efforts within the department. We're also looking to reclass a human resources clerk to the human resources specialist position. That's not a position add, but a redistribution. This person will work more closely in concert with me on special programs, particularly our civil service, our comp and class studies, and some of the ERP implementation that'll be very specific to human resources. Lastly, or the last two, labor negotiations agreement. We have been in contract or agreement with our labor negotiator for over 30 years. Based on current needs of our processes and time commitments, as well as the fact that we have not done a RFP in recent years, we are going out to market to see what opportunities present for our labor negotiations. This year, we will have 2 open contracts for fire and SEIU that we'll be entering into over the next several months, and we would like to see what opportunities present for a new agreement for a labor negotiator. The last item is Learn under NeoGov. Again, having the opportunity to have a database rich with new enhanced platforms, sexual harassment training, which is obligated each year, performance, skill sets, communication. This will be integrated with our NeoGov system, which will be Perform and Onboard, where we can automatically assign employees important training sessions to help drive performance and succession planning throughout the organization. Overall, the budget includes a 13.2% increase. Again, some of those larger ticket items and some of the allocations from comp and class that have been provided into human resources. And it's a overall $328,410 increase from 21-22 to 22-23. I did not put new goals for next year because I truly believe what we have in process is phase 1 and that we need to continue on those. We have officers to hire, we have new positions to fill, we have training and performance to roll out, and so a continuation of current goals and objectives will be at top priority for 22-23, as well as supporting departments on an ongoing basis. Hope that I added value and didn't make it too direct. If any questions, I'm available. If not, I'd like to thank staff in HR for all of their efforts this past year, but most importantly, all of you for your positive feedback and support in these initiatives that we've been taking on day in, day out. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. Councilmember Parlier.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Christy. I read recently, it's probably in the last week, Shafter PD, or City of Shafter, is offering, I believe it's 10,000 and 40 hours of vacation transfer. Are we in line at all with that? I know the county's doing something a little bit different too, as far as those laterals.
Mayor Go, Councilmember Parley, we are currently at $4,500 for the bonus, and the city manager's office and HR are currently looking at transfer accrual opportunities to see if that's a direction we would like to take.
You mean vacation transfer?
Correct.
Okay, well, my opinion is anything we can do to help attract, the better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Parley. Vice Mayor.
Well, it's about time. I've been advocating to go out for a new labor negotiator for many years, and I applaud you for going out. It's way past time to do that, so good luck with that.
I may have heard that through the grapevine.
You might have, you probably did.
I did, thank you. Yes,
Bye.
so we'll be bringing that back upon examination of the RFP results. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to follow up on the wellness initiative. What is the participation rate? Any data to show that that's working, or how are we doing?
Not quite there with Virgin Pulse. Participation is growing. At last, I believe we were just over 800 employees. We were at the employee breakfast with a table enrolling people, and if you saw the Be Strong shirts, we were giving those out to incentivize people to enroll. So I'm hoping by the end of the summer, we'll start to really have more of a collective what that participation and what results look like. In terms of, all of our programs are increasing right now. So I feel like the webinars, we're getting increased participation. It's really finding the right mechanism for delivery. We used to do all of the webinars in person, or the training sessions in person, went online, got double the participation. So we're still identifying some of our kinks and perfecting the process, but I would think by end of summer we'll have better data on the Virgin Pulse app.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Christy, are our employees taking advantage of At Ease, the new mental health first responder program, and do they provide enough of services in a short enough of time to meet our needs?
Mayor Go, I do believe we are. To say that it's small in percentage, but there's a number, and so we're very glad to see that. Former Deputy Chief Martinezson actually came and spoke to a collective group for all of Kern County and presented some statistics on At Ease. And yes, Bakersfield Fire and Bakersfield PD was definitely present within those statistics and utilizing the system. Risk management and human resources, when we get a call, that's one of the first providers that we do recommend for individuals, and we are hearing good feedback. So we're continuing to drive that. I have not, because it's such a confidential system, it's hard for us to monitor. So the numbers in terms of the closure, repeat services, as I recall, it was typically encounters were around 6, where someone maybe called in 6 times. Is that enough? I'm not sure. We're continuing to partner very closely with Trevor in that endeavor to see what opportunities lie, again, in a confidential manner. So I'll have to get back to you on that one. But we're very pleased to see that it's working and that we're getting favorable feedback that it's an option. So yes.
Good. Thank you, colleagues. I don't see any other requests to speak. So thank you very much. And on to technology services, and we're dropping like, you taking off? Yes.
See you, Kim.
Welcome. This one's going to be really exciting. You're leaving too. Oh, thank you.
I'll have to apologize in advance. I cannot match the intensity of Ms. Tenter. Won't even try. Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council members. Gregory Pronomos, Technology Services Director. I'm here to present our 23 proposed budget for the upcoming year. First, we'll start with a review of our organizational chart. The department's divided into 3 divisions. The first is the Administrative Division, which handles the business of technology services. And then we have our Professional Services and Technical Services Division that house all of our technical staff. Looking back over the last 10 years of staffing, we see that we've got a little bit of an increase in 2016. That is due to the merge of what was the Public Works Communications Division into Technology Services. And then you see the large amount of growth happening at 2020 and onward, primarily due to the Public Safety Vital Services measure that to date has offered us growth of 22 individuals to our staff. You'll see in our fiscal year 23 that we have 3 individuals in the general fund. 2 of them are requests through this budget process. 1 is a transfer from the Development Services Department. Here we're looking at a staffing and budget level comparison of our 13 comparable agencies. I want to point out that due to that investment in staffing by this council and the city manager's office, we have rose in rank among our comparable agencies. Normally, we are around that number 12, number 13 spot. We are currently dead center now at a staffing level of 3.1% of total city staff. That is 60 authorized positions. I will note that that is not an apples-to-apples comparison, as many other comparable agencies there do not offer the same number of services that your Technology Services Department does. We're not going to really focus too much on the budget side, but I put it there as a note saying that we continue to offer these enhanced services at a reasonable cost as compared to the other agencies. That brings me to our request. We're requesting 2 positions to be funded through the general fund. First is an Administrative Analyst 3 position to assist with the large number of projects that we deal with throughout the city. I don't know if you've noticed, but in pretty much every other presentation other than the attorney's office, I'll have to speak to her. Technology was discussed and used throughout the department. So we're very active, and we partner with our sister and brother departments quite closely, and so we have a large number of projects from that. The second request is for Account Clerk 2 position to be utilized in our Office of Business Management. Again, we produce a large amount of requests for procurement of software and hardware, and we also produce a large number of agreements throughout the year. And so that account clerk is needed to help process that information. I want to talk a little bit about how our technical staff are distributed throughout the department. Before you is a listing of our 10 technical teams. The number in red is the number of staff members assigned to each of those technical teams. And the number below that is just one of many metrics that we're providing in relations to said teams. For instance, the help desk in the upper right, left-hand corner there, we have 10 technicians assigned to the help desk. That equates to 1 technician for every 192 city staff members that we serve. The help desk handles the majority of the service requests coming into the department. And I believe another metric to throw at you is I think we are trending at about 18,000 requests for this year. Another team I'd like to point out is our media services team. In fact, half of the staff are sitting right behind you. And they are 4 strong in that team. And to date, they have produced 165 videos for various city initiatives, messages, as well as maybe marketing or promotional campaigns. You'll notice the infinity symbol beneath the staff members for data analytics. That's because our data analytics team is being built currently. We are currently recruiting for 2 analysts for that team and building up the infrastructure for it. So we don't have any metrics to show for it, but the possibilities are limitless. And then the final two teams I want to discuss here are our project management and security teams. These are teams that we created over the last year. The project management team there, that includes the administrative analysts that we're asking for. And as you can see, to date, we have managed over 98 projects that have come through technology services. 45% of those projects are public safety related. And then for our security team, we did not have a dedicated security team before. We do now. We have 3 analysts as part of that team. And one of their metrics is that they manage over the 350 security cameras throughout the city. Some of our accomplishments. 2 of the big ones are the creations of those 2 teams I've mentioned. Our project management office, our project manager has been spending the last year almost now developing standard operating procedures on how the department handles projects and change management, as well as she has begun working with staff on process improvement. The process improvement actually began at the city manager's level with the senior management team, and we're taking it now down and pushing it into the organization, looking at our processes, how we handle tickets coming into the office and projects and so forth, and looking for efficiencies. I did mention that we have a brand new dedicated security team. They handle both the digital and physical aspects of security within the city. Some of the digital aspects are such as malware, viruses, intrusion detection, things of that nature. The physical aspects are the door access system, the security cameras I mentioned before. We're now adding gates to that door access system, building alarms and the like. So year over year, we're expanding our services that we offer to the other department. In addition to that, they provide security training to new employees as well as ongoing security training for existing staff. And semi-annually, we do penetration testing of our computer systems and produce a risk assessment on an annual basis. So that team is already new, but very, very busy. We have started to build out and develop dashboards, and I apologize, this one's a little difficult to see on the screen. This is one of the externally facing dashboards that we've created. It is the traffic hazards dashboard. And basically what it presents is it takes a feed from the police dispatch system. And every 30 minutes, it pulls that system, and any sort of incidents that are on the roadways lists it on this map. So you will see the listing off to the left-hand side, or you can select the image of a pin in the map to get a little more information regarding the incident in that area. The next 2 dashboards are internally facing. This one is the Street Miles dashboard, starting to be used within the Public Works Department. There are a number of varied streets and roadways within our city. This dashboard, you can select the type of roadway you're interested in. That center map section will then highlight the segments of roadway so that you can then know their location. And then up in the upper right-hand corner there, it'll tell you how many miles of roadway we have of that type within the city. This 3rd dashboard is currently still in development in partnership with the fire department. They spoke of the many incidents to which they report to. This dashboard collects that information, puts it in one place so that they can look at it and analyze their statistics. We've also began developing hubs, and what hubs are initiative-based websites. The 2 that we have here are the homelessness response, which is being developed in partnership with the city manager's office, and then as well as the transformative climate communities plan in development with the economic and community development department. Looking forward, we'll be, within the next few months, hopefully bringing an agreement before this council on the chosen vendor for the regional radio system. Once that agreement's in place, we'll be beginning the detailed design review, have a better understanding of overall costs, and then hopefully before year's end, we'll actually begin installation of the new radio system that's been long overdue for our public safety departments. I know from our standpoint, we are really trying to expedite that process. Once that contract is signed, we will be one of the two agencies involved between us and the county. We plan to be first up. We're, of course, the easier install to do. And we'll be purchasing radios up front with that. So we'll hope to have that project completed within a 2, maybe 2.5 year time frame once it begins. So that has been a long time coming. I've been involved with that project since late 2015. So I'm happy to see it come to this resolution. As I've mentioned before, we're developing a data analytics program that goes above and beyond the use of just dashboards to present information. It uses tools such as artificial intelligence and machine learning to really get to looking at the various connections between the disparate data. And when I say disparate data, I mean that could be data from within the city or external to the city from a number of formats such as documents, databases, spreadsheets, even audio and video files. Utilizing those tools to create actionable information moving forward that can be used for departments. We're also looking to add LiDAR to our drone use throughout the department. What LiDAR stands for is light detection and ranging. It's a technology used for measuring and mapping three-dimensional objects in environments. What we plan on using that technology for is beginning our catalog of three-dimensional imagery. That imagery could then be used both virtually as well as physical. Virtually, for an example, we can have it as a map layer in our GIS system, where you're looking at a map of the city, enable the buildings map, and then see a three-dimensional representation of the buildings throughout the city. You probably see a lot of that when you go to Google Maps. We're going to be doing that for the city. In the physical realm, we are also beginning our foray into 3D printing. With that, we could then take the imagery that we've developed using the LiDAR system and create 3D models through the use of the 3D printer. And then those models can be used for citizen engagement opportunities around initiatives, buildings, things of that nature. Then it's a physical, tangible object that citizens can actually see and look at. Of course, all this innovation requires funding. And as such, the Technology Services Department is requesting $16.5 million to be funded for our fiscal year 23 budget. That is not inclusive of our capital improvement program request that we'll be speaking to momentarily. That is a 30% increase over our existing current budget for this year. I want to speak, other than the operational increases, I want to speak about the areas of investment that some of that $16.5 million is going to. First and foremost, we have $152,000 set aside for education and training. Technology changes quickly and is always advancing, and as such, our staff within Technology Services has to continually train and skill up to keep pace with that technology change. I've mentioned the data analytics before. We've got $412,000 set aside to help build that project up. We have $443,000 for securing city assets. $143,000 of that is for the specific purchase of a network AI monitoring system. And what that system will do is going to monitor all traffic across the city's networks and then learn from it, learn our normal traffic patterns, the data use, and things of that nature. And then when it sees something out of the ordinary or something amiss, not only will it notify staff, but then could take action in mitigating any risk or loss of data on that abnormality. It's almost as if we have a staff of analysts watching our network 24/7 without the payroll costs. We've got $626,000 set aside for connecting systems. That's connections between the buildings. We've got a lot of fiber connections, network connections, and things of that nature, some lease lines. So that money is earmarked for that. We've got $659,000 earmarked for ongoing and new consulting and managed services. We deal with an Infotech research group on consulting and make sure that we're conducting our best practices, as well as we use managed services for a number of things such as wire pulling, fiber installations, things of that nature, as well as augmenting existing staffing level. We have just over $2 million in new and replacement equipment and $4 million for ongoing software licensing and equipment maintenance of existing systems. Our budget is funded through 3 funds. The predominant fund is the equipment fund, which is an internal service fund at 46%, I believe that says. Then the second most utilized fund is the general fund at 38%, and then 16% of it's funded through public safety and vital services. And with that, I'm going to bring up Assistant Director Aaron Kennedy to go over our capital improvement project requests for the upcoming year.
So for fiscal year 23, Technology Services has a proposed capital improvement project budget of just under $1.3 million for 9 projects. 7 of those 9 projects are related to security projects. 2 are related to construction and modifications. If you look at the first 5 listed, those are continuations of multi-year projects already in the works. We're in multiple phases of those to either increase, upgrade, install, or enhance security functions to existing city facilities and new city facilities. We do have listed for as a future project for next fiscal year, currently slated for next fiscal year, redundant downtown network ring to increase redundancy and resiliency to how we connect our core city facilities. Currently, we have something in place, but this would give us an additional layer in case some damage were to occur to those connections. The next 4 projects are actually new for this fiscal year, starting with City Hall South office remodel. That is to remodel the existing space that Technology Services occupies in this building to accommodate the expansion in staff that Greg had mentioned earlier. As we bring those staff on board, we have to be able to put them someplace, and this will allow us to reorganize and reuse the existing space we have here in order to give them the facilities necessary for them to do their job. In conjunction with that, and as a complementary project, is the next one there for the recording studio. Currently, when staff is generating the video content, as Greg had mentioned, 100+ videos so far this year, they need to borrow office space or conference room space or film outside. And while these produce videos, the unfortunate downside is we cannot have consistent lighting, sound, or background. And having a dedicated recording studio will provide for that controlled environment. Within that cost is not just the rehabilitation of space, but the equipment necessary for lighting, cameras, backgrounds, some potential props, as well as sound deadening or soundproofing materials to give for higher quality and eventually be able to produce additional types of video material. This is useful not just for Technology Services directly, but other departments or agencies could potentially use that as well. The next 2 projects are actually funded via the PSVS CIP budgets. The first is the Park Security Camera Project, and this is the initial phase of a multi-year project to add security cameras to city facilities or city parks and facilities in those parks. The intent of this is to allow additional visibility into the activities that occur in parks and aid in the investigation of any criminal activity in there. The park selected for the initial phase was done in partnership with our Recreation and Parks and Police departments for those parks that have the most need, where we thought we could put the money in and have the most immediate impact on. Eventually, as we see how that works, we plan to expand out to additional parks and facilities. And this includes the cameras, the installation, the necessary cabling, as well as connectivity to there. Those all come back to our centralized video management system, which leads actually to the last project listed is Advanced Video Analytics. Chief Terry actually referenced this a little bit in his presentation. This project is for the hardware and software to add video to our video management system, advanced AI and machine learning capabilities that will aid in the review of video files. Currently, officers or investigators have to pour through many hours, sometimes dozens or hundreds of hours of video for an incident. And what this does is it gives the ability to look through that in advance of somebody. So when they do search terms for looking for a specific object or event, it can then reduce that many, many hours of video into a shorter time period. That's the video that the officer would then have to review manually for the investigation. Our estimates on an incident, sometimes they can do 7 to 8 hours of time reviewing video. We estimate that that will reduce down to about 30 to 60 minutes. Additionally, as an added benefit, that same system could be utilized by other departments to analyze video that they currently have to be able to provide actual intelligence. One possible example is at Mechanics Bank Arena. Staff there could use this system to analyze how the pedestrian traffic flows in and around their facility so that they could make adjustments to their operations for better flow of people or activities within that building. With that, that is the end of the proposal for the CIP budget, and I turn it back to Greg.
Well, it's certainly a busy and exciting time for technology services, and I hope that you've enjoyed our look at things that we plan to do over the coming year. And with that, Aaron and I are here for any questions.
Thank you so much, Greg and Aaron. And Aaron, I can't thank you enough for your responsiveness to requests. You're always there, and really appreciate that. When the consultants were here and talking to us about the risks, technology came up really, really high in that. And I'm just curious how the plan that you're proposing compares to any recommendations that might have come out of that, and are there elements that still need to be addressed?
We have started to build out basically an incident response plan, which was one of the things that was recommended from Moss Adams during the risk assessment. I believe the other area that they focused on was the how outdated the existing ERP system is, and that's a project that's being run through the finance department, so that's being addressed as well. I will tell you, we are, excuse me, going above and beyond what was recommended in the audit. We in fact, we have even started a process of whenever we enter into an agreement with a new vendor, we're vetting the security of that company as far as, whether or not, how often they release updates to their product, things of that nature, to make sure that it's going to be in line and that they're a reliable partner moving forward. So,
thank you. Councilmember Arias.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Greg. Just one quick question, and maybe this is a question for Christian. I know that we ran a number of pilot programs for the security cameras in our parks. Have we decided which one is going to be best fit for these allocations in our parks?
Thank you, Councilmember. We have a little bit more follow-up to do on that. We are leaning towards the flock cameras, as that would simplify the number of different technologies that we're using, and that it's pretty flexible and pretty nimble, and we've had good results there. But there's a few last things that we're taking a look at, but we're honing in on that for next year's allocation of those same funds.
Fantastic. And are the flock cameras, I forget because there's so many of them, are the flock cameras the ones that are visible from the street and inside the parks? Do they have those flashing lights? I can't remember.
My understanding is that they do not have the flashing lights, but Aaron can speak to that.
Yeah.
No, the flock cameras are primarily put on either light poles or stop signs. They're specifically for traffic or advanced automated license plate readers. That's their primary purpose, but they do have some secondary purposes that we use them for in other intersections in the parks.
Got it.
But they are not the ones that have the flashing lights that say, hey, we have a camera here.
Gotcha.
If I may, though, we have continued to have discussions about having the trailers that have the poles that go up and the flashing lights. And PD is actually in the process of making some purchases there, because we did that on a pilot basis as well, because we just know that the physical visual deterrent sometimes has a different impact than just the cameras themselves. And so we're going to still have that available as a tool, but not try and, those are far more expensive. We're not going to try and deploy those to every park, but have a handful of those so that we can move them around as we see challenges, issues, or hotspots.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Arias. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Technology, thank you, Greg, thank you, Aaron, had in my mind the biggest gap when we passed PSVS. We had ignored a lot of infrastructure for a long time, and technology was one of it. So your catch-up goals were very large, and that's easily seen by, you had 37 and you hired 22. It's really a big growth, and so appreciate the efforts. And every part of the city, everybody depends on technology now. So the better you are, the better everybody is. So we appreciate your work. Lot of movement in a lot of places. So
Yes. Thank you, Councilmember.
just want to express that. Thank
I
you.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. I don't see any other requests. Thank you so much for all that you're doing.
Okay, well, take us home in the next 15 minutes, I promise. So this will cover general government legislative that includes mayor and council. Not many significant changes in these budgets. In particular, if you look at legislative, in the bigger scope of things, these are very small percentage changes as well as small dollar changes. It largely reflects the status quo, except for some small additions that are merited with some needs in the mayor's office. For city manager's office, just looking back at this last year, again, been able to, through the pandemic, maintain our services and programs. We now have a legislative platform. We've completed a risk assessment. We have our new help team. We've established our empowerment hub, done numerous customer service trainings to build off of the values and principles under the empowerment hub, and facilitated the youth jobs and internship program that's going to launch this summer. Here are the numbers related to city manager's office. You'll note that there are some position requests. Those are largely related to public safety and CalVIP, as well as one new risk management specialist that is included, or the rates for our risk functions to departments will be able to cover the costs for that position. We'll note here a few slides just to talk a little bit about how much we've seen a shift in the insurance market. On the CalVIP side, just to note the nature of the positions, we do have a 2.5 person project management team. We're recommending that half go to full-time. That's a clerk typist, has been part-time. That's been a challenge actually keeping that position filled, because part-time folks prefer to take a full-time job. And we think there's full-time work there as we've implemented this program. The other 2 positions are related to incident responses. So we have community-based organizations that are out doing outreach. They're doing case management. They're also doing responses to hospitals for hospital intervention. But we currently don't have a partner that responds immediately to the actual shooting incidents that happen in neighborhoods on the street. And there's an opportunity to really capture, that's a critical moment of intervention, and to tamp down retaliation as well as make those connections for future potential clients. And so the proposal is to create those 2 roles so that we can round out the work of our other CBOs that are doing the outreach and the case management with these 2 positions. Just a reflection overall around CalVIP. Again, it's making the project management team stronger, creating this incident response team, being far more coordinated and very timely. The time factor on this is critical. If you don't respond within a few hours to 24 hours, you've already lost a lot of your impetus for building those relationships and impacting potential retaliation. To say a little bit more about the risk position, Again, we have a number of new needs for review. We have, through CalPERS, a significantly increased number of reevaluations of employees that are on disability, and we're going to have to continue to do that into the future. We're also seeing significant increases in the types of issues that risk has to evaluate and process. And then even our own industrial disability retirement program has continued to see pressure on our ability to keep up with those. And lastly, we'll help with some of the other risk management functions, but it's a small team there in risk that does a big lift. And over the years, the number of transactions and issues that have to be processed there is beyond where our capacity is today. And those numbers paint some of that picture. If you look at that over time, the numbers, clearly are up. And as we've, not only as we've grown as an organization, but also just the environment around claims and state laws and regulations continues to be a challenge. And then over the past 2 years, of course, these COVID-19 claims have been a big stretch. And even though we see fewer and fewer numbers of COVID, those processes around some of those workers' comp claims are going to continue for the next few years as we work through those, in addition to some of the other factors I mentioned on the earlier slide. So again, if you look at these rates, it paints a picture for us where we've been managing over time the best that we can, but our actuals have exceeded what we've collected in rates from the departments for the last, prior to this year, the 2 prior years. And so we have adjusted our risk rates to be higher in this coming budget to be more reflective of the actuals that we've truly been seeing. And it can be a little bit painful because that eats into each of the funds that we draw rates from, including the general fund. But we made a determination this year that this is a good opportunity to right-size that and get back on track. Otherwise, our risk fund would continue to build a deficit over time, and this at least helps us to do some catch-up and get into a much better position going forward. Shifting gears, some of our public safety vital services items fall into more of a non-departmental or a miscellaneous category that cuts across multiple departments, and so we continue to have funding for our downtown and business district security and biohazard cleanup, our Clean City initiative. We also continue with our employee development fund that's helping do this leadership and customer service training and empowerment hub that I mentioned. We have added $150,000 towards grant writing in this budget. At mid-year, we put $75,000 in, and we've spent through probably at least half of that already. And there's just a huge influx of grants right now. We don't want to miss those chances. And we've been successful on Clean California, for example, and anticipate having success on other grants as well. And then last year we had a similar allocation under, I'm calling it our model of excellence. That's really our internal audit and risk assessment follow-up, our performance program. We're continuing to fund that as well to continue to drive towards a more innovative and efficient organization. And with that, we'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Clegg. I don't see any. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple comments. I just want to reinforce, any dollars spent on grant opportunities is money well spent. There's always a really good return on that when grants are well done. And I just wanted to reinforce the feedback I've gotten from the community on the help team. That's just amazing, and it's great to have a team that responds to constituents, and constituents feel like, the city's actually listening and somebody's there and things are getting done. So that's a great program. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Parlier.
Thank you, Mayor. Christian, I believe in the charter, I could be wrong, and this might be off the general government a little bit, but I think there's a segue to it. For the mayor's secretary, administrative assistant, flexibility with that person's pay, that Danielle does an outstanding job. Keitha did it before her. Keitha was, I believe, at a higher classification than Danielle, and the city has dramatically increased in responsibility, and that goes to the mayor's office too. So if that can be corrected, or if the council has flexibility in doing some of that kind of adjustment, then let us know, and I'd like to do that.
Yeah, thanks, council member. There is flexibility administratively as well as the city council in doing that. I would reflect that typically we try and do a desk audit and a study of a person's position and identify those roles through that study. But I've actually discussed this recently with Mayor, and we're going to look at that in our classification and compensation study. That's one position that we're going to take a look at to reflect the job duties that are being currently performed, make sure that's the right class.
Okay, I think the sooner the better. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Parlier. Mr. Clegg, just regarding the Clean City Initiative, there's been a lot of cleaning, and that's a good thing, but as you know, with all of the emails and phone calls I forward, there is still a great need. Do you feel that there is sufficient now to respond to the expectations of the public? They expect a clean city, and I just am wondering whether we have enough in there to respond to that.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll give you an answer that I'm not certain, but we have added, and it's actually not in the budget numbers that I just provided, but actually under Public Works, we've also proposed, and so you see that at the next workshop, $750,000 to add 3 additional teams to the 8 teams that we have today. We want to scale up at a minimum those 3 additional teams because we see that it's not quite enough what it's been in this last year. Also, we have $1.5 million in revenues from the county's tipping fees that we're targeting illegal dumping. And so we're bringing back to council soon as well. How are we going to use that 1.5 million? So if you add the 1.5 that we've had in the budget, plus the 1.5 from the county, plus this new 750, we're almost close to $4 million just on dollars to put towards Clean City. And that doesn't include our rapid response teams that are doing a lot of this work as well. We've been playing some catch up, and so we're not certain yet if as we do that catch up, then are we going to be able to maintain with 11 teams? Is that really enough? Well, that's to be seen, but I think we're getting much closer. The other piece too is I'll admit some frustration, but we'll turn it into an opportunity to sort of reflect to the community and our public viewing audience that I feel like until we also focus on some of our education campaign, which is part of that $1.5 million we're going to come back with, is really pushing that we all have a responsibility as residents of Bakersfield to help keep Bakersfield clean, and that here are the places you can take your litter and debris instead of maybe putting it in an alleyway or putting it in a vacant lot. And doing a little bit of, frankly, enforcement on the policing side too, to help encourage those that maybe don't realize it or not doing what they should be doing to go in that direction, and ultimately have our friends at Keep Bakersfield Beautiful and others be our Clean City ambassadors to really both promote and be those helping pick up, because I've been surprised even with 8 teams how quickly areas become dirty or unclean with stray bottles and wrappers and, the small things. The big items, I think we definitely have the resources to get at the big items. But just having a really clean city, part of that is asking everyone to take ownership and keep our city as clean as possible. That's another effort I think we need to push more on in this coming year.
Thank you. Is there any merit in considering contract staff to help us catch up from the pandemic? I think we've talked about that. And then maybe with the 11 teams, that can be ongoing maintenance.
I think there is, Mayor. We do have some carryover funds of Clean City that weren't fully spent that we could contract with, crews like we do for our abatement crews to go in and help speed up some of that cleanup. Also, again, we just fully staffed that 4th Rapid Response team, and they do a lot of those really big cleanups. But I do think there is merit to looking at some of those one-time monies, use it for some catch-up, and then our 11 teams in the future, we'll see if that's a good new baseline.
Thank you. And thank you to the 1,500 people who came out last Saturday to keep Bakersfield beautiful during the Great American Cleanup. Really appreciate the teamwork, and I know council members, many of you were there. So thank you. Is there anything further? I don't see any requests to speak. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you. You just mentioned the rapid response team in the riverbed, and I've seen them a few times with a skip loader and filling up very large containers with trash, and appreciate that work. I think it's going to make the river much better. Thank you.
Motion to receive and file.
Oh, I guess
Negative?
not. Oh, that's right. We don't.
Resend
thank
that.
you. And yes, we'll be here. All right, so at 4:01, seeing no other requests, we are whatever the city, I'm teasing you, we're adjourned.